Hi everyone, please subscribe to my channel. Blood Immortal Venerable. See playlist for other chapters and novels. I do not translate the novels. Credits goes to original translator and author of the novel. I only make it as an audiobook so it would be easier to just listen while doing other things. Credits goes to the author of the novel. I convert stories to audiobook for mental health, for multitasking purpose, for accessibility and time saving. Listening to audiobook is also beneficial for people who have disability. It improves our listening skills and improve our English comprehension, vocabulary and other things. So, thank you for listening. Thank you and thank you very much for your support. Chapter 861, Mahayana Lotus Flower. Every time the lotus flower trembled, a new petal would grow. As it trembled again, they anxiously waited to see another petal bloom. Derek's words had discouraged the powerful warriors of the Soul Sea realm from hoping that Zen could work wonders and impress the humans from the upper world. The sight of the flower trembling again instantly drew everyone's attention. Derek said that there might not be even one warrior in a supreme world that could make the 9-petal lotus flower fully blossom. Such a warrior would definitely attract the attention of the upper world. As for the ascending passageway, no matter how much they would have to pay, it had to be repaired. Suddenly, Derek's face became extremely serious. His eyes became sharp like lightning and he was firmly staring at the trembling lotus flower. He knew more about the lotus flower and the meaning of the bloom of its 9 petals than any of the warriors at the Soul Sea realm. Martial artists could cultivate martial arts complying with the laws of nature. They could absorb the rules of nature. In order to achieve this, they would have to go step by step, from the inferior laws to original laws, and to superior laws, which included the law of causality. However, cultivators who practiced martial arts by abiding to the natural laws would eventually encounter a huge bottleneck. They would not be able to escape the cycle of reincarnation, nor would they be able to escape the shackles of the heavenly law. Only the martial artists that defied the laws of nature could go beyond the heavenly law and obtain higher achievements. Not all the warriors could go beyond the heavenly law. Only a warrior that could activate the 9-petal lotus flower into full bloom would have the potential to go beyond the heavenly law and be considered a talent in the upper world. Moreover, the definition of talent was different across worlds. Being talented in the lower world meant having special abilities. The people who had special gifts in certain aspects were considered talented. However, in the upper world, being talented referred to creatures that could go beyond the heavenly law. A martial artist who had the ability to activate a 9-petal lotus flower meant he had the full potential of going beyond the heavenly law. In any race or force, such a figure would be greatly valued. Compared to the 9-petal lotus flower, the baptism by laws was not as impressive. Although Derek had been surprised when he found Zen was able to comprehend Fiona's time law in a short period of time, it only caught his attention but not his admiration. It was far from the shock that the 9-petal lotus flower brought to him now. From what Derek had told them, the group of Soul Sea realm masters had come to understand that the appearance of a 9-petal lotus flower signified something extraordinary and that even in a supreme world, not anyone could make it show. The problem was that this group of Soul Sea realm masters had never been to the upper world, and they didn't have any notion about a supreme world, much less 100,000 supreme worlds. It was like a person from the capital city telling a person from a remote village how big and how rich the capital was. However, the person from the remote village only had a general picture in his mind about what the capital city was like. Even if those Soul Sea realm masters racked their brains, they still failed to fathom how vast a supreme world was, and it was more difficult for them to know exactly how rare a 9-petal lotus flower was. They actually didn't care about the vastness of a supreme world. All they knew was that once the 9-petal lotus flower blossomed completely, the ascending passageway would be repaired. That was all they needed to know. The 9-petal lotus flower continued to tremble slowly. Zen continued to stare at it in silence, secretly hoping that the petals would all spread out. However, the Cyan Dragon had already told him that the number of petals that would spread out from the lotus flower was not something he could decide. The amount of petals would match a person's achievement in exploration of a supreme world and was often a forecast to a martial artist's fate. Zen didn't know much about the supreme worlds. The world lords are the strength of the supreme lords. However, he was fully aware of the strength of that young man who had appeared in the ethereal spirit sect. That person's strength might even surpass the strength of the supreme lords. He and Yan had only been together for a short period of time. Yet, in the end, Yan was taken away by that young man. If he wanted to see Yan again, he knew he had to at least become as strong as that young man was. Even if he activated the 9-petal lotus flower, it did not mean that he would be able to reach the heights he expected. Under Zen's attentive gaze, the lotus flower continued to tremble. One of the last two petals of the lotus flower finally started to slowly spread out. It's open, it's fully open. After so many years of hardship, it seems like we will finally see the light at the end of the tunnel. The eighth leaf has finally grown. There's no need to look for other ways to ascend to the upper world anymore. We will finally be able to do it in a dignified way. Hearing this, one of the powerful warriors at the Soul Sea realm even had tears in his eyes and was about to start crying. In order to make a breakthrough in the Soul Sea realm and ascend to the upper world, this group of Soul Sea realm masters, who had lived for thousands of years, had done everything they could to achieve their goals. They had gone overseas to seek for the right opportunities and risked their lives to reach the frontier of the great world. They wanted to cross through and enter another great world so that they could ascend to the upper world. They had been to the depths of the sea to hunt vicious beasts, hoping that they would find a special method from them so that they could break through. They had spent too much time in all these past years. Their goal was to become stronger, and to ascend to the upper world. Even the powerful warriors at the Soul Sea realm were not invincible in a supreme world. While they were out searching for these right opportunities, many of them had died. They paid the price of their lives, and, in the end, all of them died with grievances. Today was the day that their deaths gained meaning. Now, they would be able to complete their lifelong dream of repairing the ascending passageway. However, these people never imagined that in the sky northern region, which was also the central region in a barren land in their eyes, a dragon soar arena had appeared 3 years ago. This dragon soar arena belonged to the dragon lineage human of the Feather Holy Sea. With the help of the dragon soar arena, they would have been able to ascend to the upper world. The dragon soar arena would send them to the genuine dragon world in the upper world, and they would be imprisoned for 1,000 years. 1,000 years was certainly a long time, but it meant nothing to a mighty warrior at the Soul Sea realm who had long lifespans. Using 1,000 years of their lives in exchange for the chance to reach the upper world would definitely be a good deal. As the lotus flower continuously trembled, the 8th petal had finally completely grown. Afterwards, the 9th petal also slowly started to grow under the crowd's attentive gaze. All the 9 petals had finally grown, and now the fully bloomed lotus flower began to slowly rotate in the air above. Zen smiled as he admired the beautiful lotus flower. Although it had been hard for him to advance to the life and death realm and the process was full of twists and turns, the result was satisfying. Everyone also understood that everything was settled. In unison they let out a sigh of relief as joy filled their hearts. Just when everyone thought it was over, the lotus flower began trembling again. "What is happening?" Zen asked with a confused gaze, staring at the lotus flower. If all the 9 petals had grown and the flower had fully bloomed, then why was the lotus flower still trembling? "Master Derek, what's going on?" a powerful warrior at the Soul Sea realm asked. Derek didn't know what to say. The 9 petals had fully grown and the lotus flower now had the perfect form. But it continued trembling as if something was trying to escape from it. For a moment, Derek couldn't figure out what was happening. He was baffled and puzzled with what was unfolding in front of him. Looking at the lotus flower, Marine gently bit her lip, trying to search through the information she had got from the ancient documents in her mind. The secret sect had a long history. It was said that the inheritances of the secret sect could be traced back to the last era, which meant that secret sect already existed before many of the creatures were born in this era. The end of an era also meant the destruction of a heaven. However, in this universe, there would always be some powerful ones who could pass on the inheritances. Some inheritances could transcend time and even the heavenly law. Therefore, although Marine was not as knowledgeable as Derek, as a holy maiden of the secret sect, she had access to information that not even Derek was able to reach. The lotus flower had 9 petals, and the person who could open up all the 9 petals had a great fortune bestowed on himself by the precious lotus flower. However, this was only the first level. The first level was the Hinayana lotus flower. If one could break through the heavenly barrier, one could enter the Mahayana realm, which was the second level. Thinking of this, Marine's heart suddenly started to beat faster and she blurted out, "Master Derek, is Zen about to open the second level? The Mahayana lotus flower?" She wasn't sure herself, so she could only ask Derek. Chapter 862, A Thin Line. Derek hadn't the foggiest notion of what was going on, but that didn't mean he was unaware of what the Mahayana lotus flower was. What was unexpected was the young man in front of him. He had never thought that such a young individual would be able to activate the Mahayana lotus flower. To him, such a thing was a complete impossibility. The lotus flower was divided into the Mahayana lotus flower and the Hinayana lotus flower. The Hinayana lotus flower was characterized by a maximum of 9 petals, while the former was much more powerful and had a maximum limit of 27 petals. There had been hundreds of warriors who had activated the Hinayana lotus flower, but it was extremely rare for any supreme world to have even a single warrior who could activate all the 9 petals. Yet even with that kept in mind, in the last 3.6 billion years, the number of warriors who had achieved that wasn't too small. However, the situation for the number of warriors who had activated the Mahayana lotus flower was completely different. In the last tens of thousands of years, there was, maybe, someone in a corner of some supreme world who had activated it. After all, the upper world was simply too vast. One couldn't blame Derek for being ignorant and ill-informed about these affairs. But despite his level of knowledge, Derek himself had never heard of anyone who had activated the Mahayana lotus flower. He only heard that Supreme Lord Lloyd of the Lloyd world had activated the Mahayana lotus flower after passing through the reincarnation tribulation 2.6 million years ago. As for other Supreme Lords, Derek was unsure whether they had activated the Mahayana lotus flower or not, but if they had, news would have spread. One thing was certain, only a Supreme Lord could activate the Mahayana lotus flower. No wonder Derek didn't believe that Zen could do that. Derek's heart grew heavy and his facial expression turned glum. He could have accepted the fact that Zen had somehow managed to activate the 9-petal lotus flower, but this news was beyond his level of control. He himself did not know what this meant. The only thing he knew was that this matter would cause an unprecedented sensation and would spread like wildfire if he were to report it to the upper world through the reverse spirit channel. He felt his throat dry up. It had been many years since the upper world had sent him down to supervise the 4 divine kingdoms and obtain the ancestral dragon's egg. Derek knew of his own fate. Most likely, he had only one way to escape this world: find the ancestral dragon's egg, and then he would be qualified to return to the upper world. If he was able to discover a warrior who could activate the Mahayana lotus flower, his fate would also change, and he might even obtain unimaginable benefits as a reward. But, could Zen really do that? Derek was still puzzled. This possibility was so small that it was practically negligible. If he were to report this matter and later on it turned out to be fake, the consequences far outweighed the rewards. As he mulled this over, he suddenly had a feeling that it might be possible. The 9-petal lotus flower was the limit of the Hinayana lotus flower. If one were to count all the warriors who had ever activated the 9-petal lotus flower in the last 3.6 billion years and then count all the warriors who had activated the Mahayana lotus flower, then the numbers painted an interesting picture. However small, the possibility was there and it was still appreciable. The 9-petal lotus flower in the sky suddenly began to tremble more and more violently in the air, and its petals began to spin faster and faster. Zen didn't understand what was going on. He asked the Cyan Dragon in his mind, "Cyan Dragon, what is going on? I thought the lotus flower was done after its 9 petals. Is it possible for this thing to take root, sprout and grow a second flower?" The Cyan Dragon laughed out loud. "Your idea is strange and far-fetched. How could there possibly be a second flower? But from what is happening, it seems like you are activating the Mahayana lotus flower now. You have the fate to lead the great world of chaos, Zen, and it is possible that you can activate the Mahayana lotus flower. Just wait and see." Mahayana lotus flower? What is that thing? Zen was still puzzled. The Cyan Dragon simply said, "You'll understand the difference between the Mahayana lotus flower and the Hinayana lotus flower in a moment. It's more than just names." Right after the Cyan Dragon's voice faded, a pistil slowly rose from the center of the lotus flower. Strangely, there was a small flower bud in the middle of the pistil. Under everyone's watchful and curious gaze, the pistil rose higher and higher, with its bud expanding continuously. The rate of growth was such that it could be seen with the naked eye. Not long after this, the size of the bud surpassed the 9-petal lotus flower itself. There really is a second lotus flower, and I was right. Far-fetched, Zen chuckled. "No, you were wrong, that is the same lotus flower," the Cyan Dragon retorted. After a while, the bud stopped growing, but the lotus flower rose up, and the petals on its surface fell apart one by one, blooming unceasingly. 1 petal, 2 petals, 3 petals, 4 petals. Callan looked at the petals and counted. Pretty soon, people could see that the new lotus flower had opened up 26 beautiful petals. However, the one petal that did not bloom somehow gave everyone a feeling that the contraption was incomplete. After it had bloomed completely, it floated in front of everyone's eyes and came to a rest from its terrible and violent shaking. Then it emitted a sweet fragrance, and from the petals, a dazzling flowing light could be seen. "This young man is indeed remarkable," Marine exclaimed. Derek immediately remarked, "You are correct. At the very least, he has the fate to lead the world of chaos. Moreover, in the world of chaos, he might not be the absolute protagonist, but he can at least assume a highly important role." To lead the world of chaos. Marine had originally intended to say the same. How could she not know that the world of chaos had arrived? There was no other way for so many divine-level talents to be present in the 4 divine kingdoms. In the history of the divine kingdoms, their numbers had never reached the current stage before. Even though she knew that when the world of chaos had arrived, numerous divine-level talents would also sprout up, Marine never would have thought that a warrior who carried the fate of leading such a world of chaos would also show up and that she would actually meet such a person. Right at that moment, Marine suddenly thought back to what had happened in Immortal Mist's celestial tomb. In the Wheel of Fortune, Zen's luck had been extremely bad at the beginning. But once he had endured the hardships that the wheel had to offer, his luck had suddenly become the best among them all and he was the first one to pass through the Wheel of Fortune. When she thought about this and saw Zen activate the Mahayana lotus flower, her conjecture was confirmed. No wonder his luck was so amazing back then, Marine murmured. War King Wind had a smile on his face. His gaze had shifted from the lotus flower above his head towards Zen. To him, Thad was becoming more and more satisfying, and was showing up to be perfect. War King Wind was a straightforward and short-tempered man. Most of the warriors that cultivated the fire law had this kind of character, and if he had something to say or something on his mind, he couldn't hide it even if he wanted to. He looked at Fiona, who was sitting at his side. She was young and beautiful, and her entire body was brimming with the aura of youth. Although a warrior had a long lifespan, she still had to marry someone someday, and in today's age, the sooner the better. War King Wind was very picky about his future son-in-law. In fact, several Soul Sea Realm Masters had brought up the topic in front of him, but War King Wind had shut them all down. In his eyes, among all the younger generation warriors of the 4 divine kingdoms, there was not a single person worthy of his daughter's hand. Yes, his future son-in-law had to be perfect. Even though Zen's background was unknown and he appeared to be from the Sky Northern region, Derek had just spoken so highly of him. Zen's future was prominent, and for once, War King Wind had found someone who was worthy to be Fiona's husband. Therefore, he suddenly asked his daughter, Fiona, what do you think of Thad? War King Wind simply popped the question in front of so many people. Although Fiona was innocent, she was still an adult and immediately understood what her father was implying. Her charming eyes had originally been fixed on Zen. When War King Wind opened his mouth, her face turned red, and she retracted her gaze and pouted, "Father, what are you talking about?" War King Wind scratched the back of his head. He also knew that his daughter was shy, but this was an important matter to him. If they didn't act quickly, maybe the others would see what was going on and seize this opportunity. They would then introduce their daughters to Zen. So he wanted to pair Zen and Fiona as soon as possible. When this conversation reached the ears of the other Soul Sea Realm Masters, they all showed a trace of understanding. This guy is really cunning. With Thad's potential, his future would be incalculable. No wonder he wants to marry his daughter off to Thad, they thought. But War King Wind wasn't alone. The other Soul Sea Realm Masters also had their own plans, especially those who had young and pretty daughters. The lotus flower in the sky slowly rotated and its color finally dimmed, slowly disappearing from everyone's sight. When he saw this scene, Zen sighed and told the Cyan Dragon in his mind, "Alas! I thought that I would be able to activate the last petal too." The Cyan Dragon sneered, "In your dreams, boy. To be able to activate even a single petal of the Mahayana lotus flower is highly difficult. You should be extremely satisfied. Also, as long as the Mahayana lotus flower has appeared once, it will appear each time you go through a tribulation." Zen nodded as he walked towards the pyramid. He still had a large amount of precious ores to deal with. However, at this time, a black thin line suddenly appeared in the sky. Chapter 863, Black Light. The thin line in the sky appeared all of a sudden. However, the moment it came into view, everyone, including Zen himself, froze on spot as if immobilized. Zen felt a great aura within seconds. The aura seemed to surpass the limits of living beings. They felt their bodies solidify and their blood stop circulating. Their hearts stopped beating and only their consciousness remained working. They felt that their souls were, under this thin line, like insignificant specks of dust. What is that? How can something be so powerful? It is only a thin line, but I can already feel its might. I'm insignificant. I feel like nobody at all. Each and every Soul Sea Realm Master had lived for tens of thousands of years. They had long lifespans, wide ranges of knowledge, and exceptionally mature minds. Their warrior spirits were meant to be as solid as rocks. However, the warrior spirits of some of the Soul Sea Realm Masters started to show signs of breakdown under the power of the thin line. Its power was unleashed against Zen. The others were still some distance away from him and only he was bearing the brunt of it. Zen raised his head and gazed ahead at the thin line. A cold expression covered his face. Cyan dragon, what is that? Zen did not think too much of it. At the moment, he felt like he was facing a life and death situation, so he immediately inquired the cyan dragon about it. At the very least, he wanted to know if he had a way to escape this obstacle. However, the cyan dragon simply said, I don't know. Even the cyan dragon had not seen such a thing previously. He was indeed unable to answer Zen's question. But soon, Zen came to know what it was. The thin line continued to extend several tens of feet in the sky. Soon after, it split into two. As the two lines separated, their heads and ends still connected, they formed an eye socket. In the center of this eye socket was a black eye. An eye. There were perhaps tens of thousands of species in the universe. Each of them had distinct appearances, but there was one similarity that they all shared, the eye. It's an eye. Whose eye is that? Zen's brows furrowed, a look of caution on his face. He did not feel any goodwill radiating from the eye. On the contrary, he felt a sharp hostility coming off it. No, perhaps it can't be called hostility, Zen thought. I don't qualify to make it feel hostile to me. I'm insignificant. The eye appeared simply because its master is curious about me. The hostility must come from instinct. As long as the eye's master wants it, he or she could kill me in an instant. Zen's gaze met the eye as he stood rooted to the spot. A moment later, the eye blinked, and a black beam of light shot out from its pupil. The eye then blinked twice again and disappeared into thin air. However, the black light was still present. It flew off and continued to refract in the air as it approached Zen. Whether it was Derek or the other Soul Sea Realm masters, none of them dared say a word. Their faces were deathly pale as they looked at the black light flashing in the air. Zen had just released the lotus flower. For many of the Soul Sea Realm masters, he was their only hope to ascend to the upper world. If anyone attempted to take Zen's life, they would waste no second in killing the opponent. In their eyes, Zen had become the key to ascend to the upper world. They would protect him at all costs. However, at that moment, none of them moved. They were horror-struck watching the black light flash and could not even muster the thought of attacking it. Buzz. The black light soon covered a distance of dozens of feet and changed directions once again. It changed its direction before extending another 70 to 80 feet. It refracted several times, but its distance from Zen was constantly narrowing. It was only a matter of time before it reached him. How could Zen possibly face this black beam of light? He didn't have much time left and he knew that he wouldn't be able to withstand the black light. His life vitality wouldn't stand a chance. His sacred weapon's physique wouldn't do. His stellar body would be too weak against it. His hope relied only on the will of the world. I suppose I can transfer the attack of the black light to the whole world, he thought. Suddenly, a far-fetched idea entered his brain. Although the eye's strength could possibly destroy the entire world effortlessly, Zen had no other choice but transfer the power to this world. Thinking of this, Zen closed his eyes and lost in his own thoughts. He tried to frantically absorb the memories in his mind, the memories that the will of the world had projected onto him. Quickly, he tried searching for the memories of all the mountains in the world. Mountains. In the eastern region, there were Mountain, the Dragon Mountain, the 33 Peaks, and the vast northern mountains. In the central region, there were the 9 Dragon Mountain, Western Mountain Range, and over 10,000 other mountains. There were a total of 730,000 mountains in the entirety of the Sky Northern region. About 1.3 million mountains on the Divine Kingdom continent. 860,000 mountains on the Sea God continent. In addition, there were numerous other mountain ranges on various desolate islands. There was also a land of savagery larger than the Divine Kingdom continent, home to over 2 million mountains. He could count a total of more than 5 million mountains. With just a thought, Zen had counted the mountains of the world. After some pondering, Zen decided not to transfer the power of the black light to the eastern region. Just before it surged toward Zen, he activated the strength transfer. Since I am the representative of this world, I should have the right to rule it. I hope you can help me overcome this crisis, Zen said calmly. He was addressing to was the will of this world. Although Zen had fused himself with the will of the entire world, he still could not be considered its master. He had no way of resisting the black light and could only rely on the world to help him out. Of course, the will of the world was the gathering of all life forms in this world. It wasn't a single entity or a specific thought. Even though the little monster had been the incarnation of the world's will, he himself hadn't known about this. Zen had only uttered the words out of regard for the living beings of this world and the respect he had for himself. As soon as he finished speaking, the black light shot at him. Everyone present could only stare blankly at the scene before them. Seeing this black light, no one had thoughts of attacking it, for there was nothing they could do at all. The black light hit Zen's chest in an instant and entered his body rapidly. In the next moment, his entire body, including his lips, the whites of his eyes, his nails, as well as his clothes, all turned black. As this black light traveled across Zen's body, it instantly wrapped around each cell to destroy it. If the insides of Zen's body had been on display, everyone would have noticed that his brain, organs, bones, blood vessels, and every drop of his blood had turned black. It was an attempt to wipe Zen out. If the black light succeeded, not a single hair or cell in his body would be left in this world. Not a single granule of his body would remain. In one breath, a singularly terrifying power had been released. The cells and parts of Zen's body tried to tolerate the immense impact of the energy. As the energy of the black light began to expand, the first mountain began to collapse. Boom! It was a mountain in the western part of Central Region that had endured the huge amount of energy and exploded from the inside, but not a single rock rolled down. Before it could collapse completely, it had disappeared. Chapter 864, The Whole World. Two snow flood dragons' lair was originally built in the middle of the mountain, but suddenly, the entire mountain disappeared and the dragons began to fall down. Luckily, they managed to fly up. They were intelligent beings, but they still couldn't understand what was going on. How did a mighty mountain just disappear all of a sudden? However, what happened next left these dragons flabbergasted. The towering mountains in front of them were rapidly disappearing. The moment those mountains started to collapse, they would disappear. Boom, 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 boom. There were not many people in the western part of the Central Region. About 50 to 60,000 mountains sat right next to each other. Even if a virtual Tribulation Realm warrior wanted to cross over such a large mountain range, it would probably take him very long. Right this moment, these mountains were getting annihilated within seconds. This strange scene was not taking place only in the western part of the Central Region, but all over the entire Central Region. All the mountains were being destroyed. The three leaders of the World Commercial Alliance were holding a meeting on a small, 1,000-foot-high mountain on the southern side of Oracle City. All of the investors of the World Commercial Alliance attended the meeting. Now, only the World Commercial Alliance stood out in the Central Region. However, Dylan did not hold any ambitions of forming a sacred place. The World Commercial Alliance was indeed a powerful force, but the members were all merchants after all. However, suddenly in the middle of the meeting, the small mountain started to collapse. Everyone was shocked, and before they could figure out what happened, the ground beneath their feet had disappeared. The entire mountain was instantly erased. "Are we under attack?" an internal Elixir Realm warrior shouted. Although they had recouped from the previous attack of the Heavenly Evil Divine Kingdom, it had left a deep impression on many warriors. "Attack! Dang it!" Hobbs, who was floating in the air, cursed loudly. Many warriors could destroy a mountain, so could Hobbs and the others. It was not so difficult, but nobody could do it in an instant. This remarkable skill had captured their imaginations. An even more intense crumbling sound followed and the White Mountain, which was 15,000 feet tall, suddenly disappeared from Oracle City. In Oracle City, as long as people looked to the south, they would be able to see the black shadow of the White Mountain. It stood like a giant guarding the south of Oracle City. But now it had vanished without a trace. The White Mountain has also been annihilated. Hobbs swallowed hard. Fear was reflected in everyone's eyes. They had no idea what was happening. One by one, the mountains vanished into thin air. In this way, almost 100,000 mountains disappeared. These mountains, no matter how high they were all obliterated by an unstoppable force. The Central Region, the Divine Kingdom continent, the Sea God continent, and that was not all. Every mountain in the whole great world was getting wiped off the face of the planet. Zen was still pitch black, as if he had just crawled out of a black quagmire. He stood still, but his mind was spinning rapidly. Through his memory, which was constantly updating, he was able to find out how many mountains were left in the whole great world. 5 million mountains, 4 million mountains, 3 million mountains, 2 million mountains, 1 million. Is there no way to withstand the power of this black light if all the mountains are wiped out? Zen thought to himself, his eyes flickering. He could feel the power that the black light was continuously releasing. There was no way to know how much power it had. It was a terrifying thought. However, Zen still had mighty backup forces behind him, the sea and continents. Zen chose not to transfer the power of the black light to the sea. In order to resist the heavenly tribulation before, Zen had transferred most of the power into the Feather Holy Sea, causing a huge tsunami. It might have caused immeasurable loss. The warriors were not afraid of the tsunami, but ordinary people would get injured or even killed by it. Eventually it was brought under control by the Soul Sea Realm Masters, who saved the 4 divine kingdoms from being destroyed. If the power of this black light was transferred to the sea of the entire great world, it might cause a tsunami of unimaginable proportions, perhaps tens or even hundreds of thousands of feet high. Perhaps the Sea God continent, the Divine Kingdom continent and even the central region would be totally obliterated, and most of the creatures would be annihilated. This was why Zen didn't choose to transfer the power of the black light to the sea. And he also wasn't willing to transfer the power directly to the continents. If he transferred it to the vast Divine Kingdom continent, he feared that it would collapse in an instant despite its size. However, if there was no other choice, he might be compelled to do so. But he wanted to avoid this catastrophic destruction as much as possible. In the world of warriors, the strong preyed on the weak and most of warriors were extremely conceited. But Zen was different, he didn't want to attain power at the cost of billions of innocent lives. This was not to say that Zen was kind-hearted and righteous, and he was sometimes as ruthless and cold as any great warrior, but he just did not want to lose the last trace of humanity. In this regard, he broke free from the so-called law of the jungle like a wild beast. Meanwhile the countdown of destruction continued. 500,000 mountains. Zen gritted his teeth, his brows deeply furrowed in concentration. 300,000 mountains. The speed at which the mountains were being annihilated far exceeded his imagination. 200,000 mountains. Zen's heart was beating faster and faster. He was about to face a difficult choice. Would he choose to die alone? Or would he sacrifice tens of millions of creatures? This was a very simple and selfish choice for many warriors, but it was too difficult for Zen. 100,000 mountains. 50,000 mountains. 10,000 mountains. If the power of the black light still didn't weaken after all these mountains were destroyed, then Zen might have to use the mountains in the eastern region. He thought about the 33 peaks where he used to stay. Countless disciples were cultivated there. Most of them were nature creatures that couldn't fly. If those peaks were destroyed, numerous disciples would die. Zen was getting more and more distressed when he suddenly felt the black energy starting to weaken. This black light had arrived menacingly, but it had disappeared just as quickly. In the blink of an eye, Zen's originally black body began to change as the black energy vanished. His body seemed to have been washed clean and it quickly returned to normal. I have survived this encounter. There was no trace of joy on his face. Instead, he appeared sad. He had indeed pulled through. While he was still in one piece, the entire great world had paid a huge price on his behalf. There were 5 million mountains in total destroyed. There might be a great number of living beings, including humans, which were sacrificed. Zen withstood the black light, it was unable to kill him. This guy is really... Marine was so shocked that his breath got caught in her throat. The Soul Sea Realm Masters were also silent. They knew that Zen was able to transfer the black light's power. The little monster from the Nine Furnace Martial House had displayed this ability more than once before. However, no one knew the limits of this ability. Could it be that there was no limit to how much power Zen could transfer? The Soul Sea Realm Masters didn't know much about the black light's power. But the one thing they did know for certain was that it could destroy them all easily. Even if the number of the Soul Sea Realm Masters increased by 100 times, they still wouldn't be able to survive the black light. But Zen was able to withstand this incredible attack. What had he sacrificed in order to do so? Where did he transfer the power? There were no mountains on the Feather Emperor Island, so many Soul Sea Realm Masters had no clue that all of the mountains on the Divine Kingdom continent had disappeared. Turner couldn't take the suspense, so he asked him directly, "Thad, I know you have transferred the power to some other place, but, where did you transfer the black light's power?" Zen blinked before he replied, "Mountains." "Mountains? How many mountains?" Turner asked out of curiosity. "The mountains of the whole world," Zen responded sadly. Chapter 865, Fix a Price. A thick cloud of silence seemed to envelope the whole world. Many of the Soul Sea Realm Masters were quiet as well. Suddenly, the silence was disrupted by a click of a tongue. "So, does it mean all of the mountains within the 4 divine kingdoms have been destroyed?" Turner asked. "It's not just the mountains of the 4 divine kingdoms. The mountains in the central region and in other areas were destroyed as well. Almost all of this great world's mountains have been destroyed," Zen honestly responded. In reality, many of the Soul Sea Realm Masters had already had a tough estimate when Zen said he had transferred the power to the mountains. If a Soul Sea Realm Master like War Emperor York took action to attack Zen, Zen would transfer the power of that attack, and that power would be enough to destroy a whole mountain range. The aura the black eye emitted was quite terrifying, and the power within the black light was extremely and unimaginably strong. If Zen transferred all of the power into the mountains, how many mountains would he need? The Divine Kingdom continent had many peaks and mountain ranges of various sizes. There wasn't any accurate record of the number of peaks and mountain ranges, but a rough estimate showed that there were at least several 100,000 mountains out there. But with even that many mountains, would it be enough to counter the power within the black light? How many mountains would be needed to offset its power? 1,000 mountains, 10,000 mountains, or 100,000 mountains? In reality, about 5 million mountains were needed to offset the power. All the mountains in the whole world had been destroyed, with the exception of some mountains in the eastern region. The Soul Sea Realm Masters went silent, but they were shocked the next second. They realized how great its impact would be on the entire great world. And, what was the limit of Zen's power transferring ability? He was actually able to freely transfer the power to the entire great world. Could it be possible that he could represent the whole of it as well? Someone had finally come up with an answer, but of course, they still weren't able to guess that Zen had fused with the world's will. Thus, it could be said that Zen himself was the whole great world. What exactly is that black eye? War King Wind asked in a low voice. He sighed deeply when he couldn't find any answers. A single move had destroyed a huge portion of the whole world's mountains. What on earth was that thing? Most importantly, the eye's owner must have thought that Zen was too weak and incapable of blocking the black light's fatal strike. Just a small release of the black light was enough to destroy the mountains of the whole world. If a few more would be released, wouldn't the whole great world be destroyed? How powerful exactly was the eye's owner? It was truly hard for everyone to imagine. Even the damage of the mountains alone was already too much. I'm not sure, Zen said and shook his head. Even the cyan dragon couldn't answer the question, more so Zen. However, Derek, the white-browed Taoist priest, said, I don't know what it is, but such an enormous power might at least belong to a Supreme Lord. Perhaps the owner of that eye is a Supreme Lord. A Supreme Lord? At that moment, Zen understood something. The Supreme Lords were the most powerful beings in the universe. To destroy a great world was an easy task for them. Not only the Supreme Lords, but also the World Lords in the upper world could be so powerful as to destroy a great world. However, it isn't easy for a World Lord or a Supreme Lord to do that. I can't even figure out this eye's origin, the cyan dragon in Zen's mind remarked. I see, Zen said with a nod. Both of them couldn't determine this eye's origins or background. Who exactly did it belong to? Why did it take action against him? Despite that, Zen had passed through a tough challenge, taking the whole world as his backup force. As for that strange black eye, Zen considered it as a part of the heavenly tribulation. Of course, Zen wasn't a careless person and was wary of his judgment. Zen might not have enemies in the upper world, but there must be a reason for the black eye to have attacked him. He wondered if the lotus flower, which had bloomed, had prompted it to do so. Or was it for some other reason? No matter what, he would have to be very careful in the future. Now that Zen had stepped into the life and death realm, the slowly rotating life vitality in his body had become thick as a heavy paste. In this way, his belly could bear more life vitality and his life vitality would be even more condensed. Moreover, his strength would increase greatly. After Zen had completed his breakthrough, he set his target on the heavenly stellar secret land. He had promised to help the cyan dragon obtain the ancestral dragon egg, so he had to make this trip at any cost. Before he set off, however, he had to deal with the matters he faced now. A strange vibe tugged at Zen's senses when he approached the pyramid. Everyone looked at him in a completely different way. Most Soul Sea Realm Masters believed what War Emperor York and the Holy Maiden said. They were well aware that Zen did not come from the 4 divine kingdoms. Although they were not as hostile as War Emperor York when they looked at Zen before, they were definitely not close to him. They all seemed indifferent to him. However, there was a trace of gentleness in everyone's eyes now. It was clear that they treated Zen as a family member. When Zen saw the weird way the dozens of Soul Sea Realm Masters gazed at him, he felt a chill run down his spine. He quickly thought if something was wrong with them. However, he was unaware that those Soul Sea Realm Masters considered him as a treasure in their eyes. At that point, Zen had already turned the key to open the ascending passageway, and he had also opened the Mahayana lotus flower. All this showed that he could be a promising achiever in the upper world in the future. Everyone thought that it was a good thing to form a relationship with Zen. Alright, now it's time to distribute the minerals we've obtained, Zen announced, still being a bit stunned. Zen had no intentions of taking all the treasures from the top layers of the tree. First of all, he wasn't a weapon refiner. Although majority of the minerals were precious, they were of little use to Zen himself. However, he had already let the cyan dragon identify some of the ores that could be used to create the high-grade divine texture, and Zen had chosen to keep those items. As for the other items, Zen decided to let Turner distribute them. After all, he was in the territory of the 4 divine kingdoms. Even if Zen had dug them out himself, it would be unrealistic if he had kept all of them. After Zen finished his words, a Soul Sea Realm Master laughed and said, "Distribute. Thad, you dug out all the ores by yourself. Isn't it a little inappropriate to distribute them to everyone like this?" Turner smiled and said, "That's right. There are a lot of priceless minerals, so you should not give them to others like that. However, there are some things that we need. Thad, you can fix prices for them and sell them to us." Zen was stunned. He deeply suspected that there might be something wrong with those Soul Sea Realm Masters. He wondered why they treated him so well after he had undergone a tribulation. Could it be that they were plotting something? Meanwhile, Derek and Marine silently observed Zen. The news about Zen would definitely be reported through the Reverse Spirit channel, but now was not the time. They would wait until Zen had dealt with the ores first. Zen thought for a while, but still couldn't figure out what was going on. He mentally communicated with the Cyan Dragon, but the Cyan Dragon also didn't understand what those masters meant. After all, the Cyan Dragon also didn't know that Zen was tied up to the ascending passageway. Since he couldn't figure it out, Zen simply ignored this question and took out the ores one by one from his space ring. When Zen had previously dug out the ores, a lot of the Soul Sea Realm Masters eagerly watched him. They were quite keen on what kind of ores Zen had. There weren't many ores in the leaves of the 45th layer to 47th layer, but each ore had its own unique shape. For example, the first crystal that Zen had taken out from his space ring was like water as it slipped between his fingers and fell to the ground. However, the blue liquid quickly merged and formed a small round ball that continuously jumped about on the ground. Zen smiled and said, "In that case, how much can this water crystal cost if I sell it to you?" Chapter 866, Divine Emperor's Secret Land. Life Vitality Crystals, from what Zen had learned from Lavender, were also in circulation and used as one of the main currencies in the upper world. Since these mighty Soul Sea Realm warriors were very much willing to give him tons of Supreme Life Vitality Crystals in exchange for the ores, then of course Zen wouldn't refuse them. Just as he finished speaking, a Soul Sea Realm warrior approached Zen. "I practice the water law and I just happen to need this water crystal. I'll give you 30,000 Supreme Life Vitality Crystals for it, how about that?" 30,000 Supreme Life Vitality Crystals were not a paltry sum, so Zen naturally accepted. The first deal was quickly done. He had a surplus of precious ores in his space ring, each one worth 30 to 50,000 Supreme Life Vitality Life Crystals. Some could even fetch a price as high as 100,000. These Soul Sea Realm warriors were loaded and could definitely afford Zen's wares. To put into perspective, a Divine Kingdom's treasury usually had around 2 to 300,000 Supreme Life Vitality Crystals. If Zen sold all his ores, he'd have an estimated profit of 3 million Supreme Life Vitality Crystals. He'd be richer than the entire Divine Kingdoms. Once he sold off his ores, Zen took out the soul cores and handed them over to Turner. These soul cores served as the key to entering the Heavenly Stellar Secret Land. It was useless for him to keep them as he didn't know how to use them. It was enough for him to know that they would surely bring him into the Heavenly Stellar Secret Land. Still, he was very much curious about how these soul cores were used to enter the Heavenly Stellar Secret Land. The entire point of heading to the Feather Emperor Island for the Soul Sea Realm Masters was to hunt for the mineral-devouring bugs in the hopes of obtaining at least 1 or 2 soul cores. They got lucky and were able to haul over 100, which meant that they could send enough people to the Heavenly Stellar Secret Land and explore. Alright, since the soul cores have been distributed, it's time to set off for the Divine Emperor's Secret Land. Thad, let me bring you along. War King Wind boisterously laughed as he pulled Zen to his side. Many of the Soul Sea Realm Masters cursed War King Wind in their hearts, this old, cunning fox. Everyone knows that he's planning to draw Zen to his side in order to gain the upper hand. He's probably going to swallow his pride and even offer his precious daughter up in the process. However, it wasn't as if War King Wind hadn't stood up in Zen's defense before, so it was expected that Zen would be partial to him. In truth, after reaching the life and death realm, Zen could now resist the blood sacrifice within the Feather Holy Sea. He had no need for anyone's assistance and could simply rely on his own strength, but he couldn't just pass up War King Wind's offer, so he accepted. Wait a moment, a voice called out. It was Marine who was rushing towards Zen. Marine was his only enemy within the 4 divine kingdoms, and it was mainly because of her that he had been targeted by War Emperor York, so he couldn't help but frown at the sight of her coming towards him. What is it? Zen asked with a sullen expression. Marine smiled and took out a purple, diamond-shaped crystal. What's that? He asked, his guard up as Marine suddenly pointed the crystal at him. Don't be afraid, I'm just using it to record your image, she assured him. Image, Zen repeated. He did not quite get what she was trying to do. Noticing his reluctance, Derek smiled and quickly explained to Zen. The crystal in Marine's hand was the kind used in making picture slabs. It could record and store images, but this one was special. This purple crystal had the capacity to pass through the reverse spirit channel. As the holy maiden of the secret sect, Marine was the communicator between the upper world and the lower world. It was her job to deliver the news to the upper world that a martial artist from the Divine Kingdom continent was able to activate the Mahayana lotus flower and made a total of 35 petals come out. It was only then that Zen finally understood why those Soul Sea Realm masters suddenly changed their attitudes towards him. He also briefly wondered which group of humans in the upper world was Marine going to report to. Was it the group that Yolanda belonged to? Maybe it was the group that Immortal Mist had been a part of. Or maybe it was another group entirely. Zen thought it wise not to ask. He figured that it was better for him to play dumb, given that he had never been to a supreme world that belonged to the human race in the upper world, nor did he know much about the strength of the human race there. Once Marine recorded his image and walked away, War King Wind waved his sleeve and let out a wave of life vitality. The powerful force wrapped around Zen, Callan, Fiona, and the rest, dragging them up to the sky and pushing them into the depths of the Feather Holy Sea. The other powerful Soul Sea Realm warriors flew up to the sky, while Randy, Bram, and a few others also left Feather Emperor Island. Not everyone could go to the Divine Emperor secret land. Due to the limited supply of soul cores the past few years, only a small number of Soul Sea Realm masters could go and explore. This time, thanks to Zen, there were plenty of soul cores to be used, which meant that, aside from the powerful Soul Sea Realm masters, a few of the younger generation were also given the chance to go to the Divine Emperor's secret land. Of course, this chance was only extended to the crown princes and other royalty. The remaining divine level talents could only return home. While flying through the sky, War King Wind seized the opportunity to chat with Zen. It was a bit weird having a stately ruler of a divine kingdom probe his background, but Zen politely answered all his queries despite feeling as if the questions came from a matchmaker rather than a king. It was when War King Wind asked Zen if he was married did he finally understand why he was asking him all these questions. He glanced sideways to Fiona, whose ears were obviously flushed red from embarrassment. I'm not married, he replied with a smile. But I have already pledged myself to a girl back home. Zen had already planned it all out. Once he returned to the central region, he would fulfill his promise to Letitia and hold a grand wedding ceremony. Zen's reply painted a disappointed look on War King Wind's face. It was normal for men to have several wives and concubines. He himself had more than 3,000 back in his palace. However, his daughter was a dignified princess of a divine kingdom. Although he had planned to arrange a marriage between Zen and Fiona, he couldn't marry her to a man who already had a wife. That would mean that his darling daughter would only be a concubine. While War King Wind was still deep in thought, Fiona was red with fury at her father. She didn't like it that her father was trying to matchmake her with Zen right in front of her. She'd always been an obedient daughter, and even she was also a bit disappointed that Zen was already engaged to another woman. She wished her father gave her a bit more face. Father, there's no need to ask about this anymore. Why shouldn't I ask? I'm only doing this for your own good. War King Wind smiled gently at his embarrassed daughter. Fiona could only glare at her father, her face full of conflicting emotions. Beauties had always admired heroes. This was proven true ever since ancient times, and Fiona was no different. Ever since Zen defeated her by the West Dragon River, the seed of love had already rooted itself deep in her heart. However, she was still too young, not even 20, and she was too shy to express the emotions she felt for him. Meanwhile, her father shamelessly tried to matchmake her to the object of her affections, which was greatly embarrassing on her part. Fortunately, the awkward moment was immediately dissipated by the black island that had appeared in front of them. Despite being quite far from the island, everyone could already feel the malicious aura that emanated from it. This was one of the 4 secret lands of the Feather Holy Sea, the Divine Emperor's secret land. Rather than just an island, this Divine Emperor's secret land was so much more. It was a place of death, a graveyard of the dragon lineage human. Millions of corpses littered this island graveyard. After the dragon lineage human's blood sacrifice, all creatures turned into a cloud of bloody mist that became a powerful curse spread throughout the entire Feather Holy Sea. The corpses were not living beings, so they were not affected by the blood sacrifice. Truth be told, if it wasn't for the heavenly stellar secret land, there would be nothing worth of interest in this divine emperor secret land. Sure, there might be a few valuable burial items, but it wasn't anything a Soul Sea Realm master would be excited about. The power of the blood sacrifice in the heavenly stellar secret land was so strong that not even Soul Sea Realm masters could resist it. The only way to enter the heavenly stellar secret land was through the corpses of the dragon lineage human, which they could control with the use of the soul cores. This was precisely the reason why they had to go to the divine emperor secret land. Just as they landed, they found another batch of Soul Sea Realm masters already waiting. Chapter 867, The Spirit Shrine. The entire Divine Emperor Island was composed of a massive, black cemetery. On the shore of the island, the other powerful Soul Sea Realm masters had already been waiting for quite a long time. Strange looks of curiosity were revealed when they saw that the 4 divine kingdoms' rulers came along with Fiona, Bram, and the other young warriors. Your Majesty, why did you bring them to the Divine Emperor's secret land? A Soul Sea Realm master of the Harlan Divine Kingdom couldn't help but ask. Since the group of masters waited in the same spot and hadn't traveled to the Feather Emperor Island, they had no knowledge of Zen having obtained the Black Star and many soul cores. Since they didn't have enough soul cores every year, these masters would vie with one another to enter the heavenly stellar secret land. Because of that, many of them argued indefinitely over the qualifications of obtaining the soul cores. Because of the lack of the soul cores, the masters went as far as to suggest an actual fight. While they considered it for a time, they found that it would be too unrealistic. The impact of the fight among the Soul Sea Realm masters would be extremely grand. If they were to hold real fights, the entire Divine Emperor Island wouldn't survive a couple rounds. And since that problem hadn't yet been solved, why did the kingdom rulers bring the princes with them? How come Thad came with them as well? Could it be that the Divine Kingdom rulers planned on assigning a portion of soul cores to these juniors this year? Eventually, Turner managed a faint smile and said, Mario, bring out all the spare spirit shrines. Upon that, one of the masters, Mario Joe, furrowed his brows in shock. Your Majesty, how many soul cores did you obtain this time? Must we use the spare spirit shrines? The spirit shrine was used to stimulate the soul core, made by the blacksmith from the Harlan Divine Kingdom. Before departing this year, he counted 29 soul cores, meaning there was a need for the same number of spirit shrines. Normally, if they obtained a single soul core after eliminating all the mineral-devouring bugs on the Feather Emperor Island, they would be considered lucky. Obtaining 2 soul cores would be completely unprecedented. Such an occurrence hadn't happened in decades. Could it be that all the Divine Kingdom rulers were merely extremely lucky this time to have gotten over 3 soul cores? Since the spirit shrines weren't anything precious, Mario Joe had prepared 200 of them. But no matter how many shrines there were, they would be useless if there weren't any soul cores available. With a bland smile, Turner said, pull out all the spirit shrines. This time, we've obtained over 100 soul cores. What, over 100 soul cores? Does that mean everyone can enter the heavenly stellar secret land this time? How is that possible? Isn't that the number of the soul cores of the mineral tree? It's impossible. They couldn't have all been dug out by the mineral-devouring bugs. Not only did all the soul cores need to be dug out, but they also had to be dug out just a few days ago. Otherwise, they would have already been digested. It was too unbelievable for the soul cores to have been taken straight from the bugs' stomachs. Your Majesty, did you find a way to open the top layer leaves? One of the Soul Sea Realm masters asked after a moment of thought. Because all the masters knew how nearly impossible it was to dig out the top layer leaves, they all wore cautious and excited expressions as they waited for the answer. With a chuckle, Turner announced, everyone, we have to thank Thad. He's the one who dug all the soul cores out, one by one. The words left the masters stunned. As for those who rushed over from the Feather Emperor Island, they all wore wide smiles on their faces. All were astonished by the fact, no one thought that Zen would ever be able to take out the Black Star. However, even with the shock of the Black Star and the mineral tree, the shock caused by Zen undergoing a tribulation was incomparable. After that, Turner told the Soul Sea Realm masters what happened on the Feather Emperor Island. And when the masters turned to Zen once again, the look in their eyes shifted. Repairing the ascending passageway while unprecedented, it was rather joyous news. Compared to this, exploring the heavenly stellar secret land had become a trivial matter. With that, Mario Joe quickly brought out the spare spirit shrines. These so-called spirit shrines were small, extremely exquisite boxes. The top side was broad while the bottom side seemed to be more narrow, attached to 4 small legs for support. The most special part of the box was its material. When Zen attempted to probe it with his perception, he was instantly thrown back. It seemed that the spirit shrine could not be touched by a warrior's soul perception. Resigned, Zen stood quietly to the side as he watched the Soul Sea Realm Masters busy themselves with arranging all sorts of things. There was no more question, the Masters wouldn't refuse to let him enter the Heavenly Stellar Secret Land anymore. He only had to wait. After the spirit shrines had been arranged and placed in order, Turner began to distribute the soul cores. Because there were enough at the time, not only the Soul Sea Realm Masters obtained the soul cores, but Fiona, Callan, Randy, Bram, as well as the other Divine Kingdom princes got the chance to have one. Only Frederick, whose soul was injured, couldn't enter the Divine Emperor's secret land this time. After all the preparations were complete, War King Win said, "All right. This time, many of the warriors can enter the Heavenly Stellar Secret Land. This is probably the most we've had in years. You must do your best to occupy the powerful corpses. But that all depends on your ability to do so." After War King Wind made his announcement, some of the masters sat down, cross-legged in front of the shrines before pulling out the soul cores in their hands. In the next moment, the soul cores began spinning, emitting a strange power. Then, they all threw the soul cores into the spirit shrines. The moment they sank into the shrines, a strong, attractive force seemed to shoot out from each spirit shrine. On the other side of the spirit shrine, a faint, black shadow appeared, catching everyone's attention. The soul body. Zen's eyes flashed. Seeing Zen's astonishment, Randy uttered, "When the spirit shrine is paired with the soul core, it can help us separate our souls from our bodies so that they can enter the tomb and occupy the corpses. If a warrior's soul was powerful enough, he could take the body shell. But he still had to make use of the soul core to make any use of the corpse." At this time, quite a few Soul Sea Realm Masters were already sitting next to the spirit shrines, pouring the soul cores into them. One by one, their souls were sucked into the shrines and merged with the soul cores before turning into a mass of black shadows and rushing forward. Randy, Fiona, and Callan also followed suit, pouring the soul cores into the shrines. Soon after, 3 black shadows appeared beside the shrines. From the silhouette of the shadows, others could recognize the 3 warriors' souls. For instance, while Fiona's soul seemed delicate, Callan's soul seemed to stand tall and strong. Witnessing the scene, Zen proceeded to throw the soul core in his hand straight into the shrine. A moment later, he could feel a strong, magnetic force emanating from the shrine. It was aimed specifically at Zen's soul. Instead of resisting, he allowed himself to get sucked into it. In an instant, Zen felt his soul fuse with the soul core before it appeared on the other side of the shrine. It was then free to leave his body and roam about. After his soul left his body, Fiona, Callan, Randy, and all the others present looked over. The souls of Randy, Bram, and Fiona looked a gray-green color. These were signs of instability. The souls of the Soul Sea Realm Masters were pitch black, while the souls at the Fighting Soul Realm were utterly stable. But Zen's soul was blooming with green luster. The faint light emitted by his soul was the will of the great world. "Zen, your soul." Through her consciousness, Fiona tried to reach him. Zen's soul had been hidden within his mind in the past. Without entering his mind, no one would see it. But now, it was impossible for him to hide it. With a faint smile, he called to them, "Come on. Let's go." At this moment, many souls that had fused with the soul cores advanced deeper into the Divine Emperor's secret land, which served as a perfectly renovated cemetery. After the soul bodies flew for some time, they stopped right at the entrance where a lamp hung near the gate. "Everyone, wait a moment," one of the Soul Sea Realm Masters used his consciousness to envelop Zen and the rest. Chapter 868. Soul Purifying Light. Now that everyone's soul had been made bare, their strength was heavily reduced, with Zen being the obvious exception to this problem. The reason behind this was that his soul was already several times stronger than his peers. Although it hadn't stepped into the Jasper Fighting Soul Realm yet, once a soul had merged with the world's will, even a Soul Sea Realm Master's soul couldn't compete with it. The lamp hanging in front of the cemetery was what the cultivators called a cemetery guarding lamp. It was supposed to injure all of the ghosts, but at the moment, it might be dangerous to them too, since they were in a soul state, which wasn't exactly human. This was exactly why the Soul Sea Realm Master had stopped Fiona and the other young warriors. He was afraid that they would be eliminated by the cemetery guarding lamp too. Zen stood still without the slightest signs of movement. He was trying to communicate with the cyan dragon in his mind. The ancestral dragon's egg had been in the heavenly stellar secret land for generations after generations. These kings and warriors had tried all they could to fetch it for so many years, but all their efforts had been in vain. If Zen wanted to get his hands on it, he definitely needed help from the cyan dragon. The dragon lineage human and the cyan dragon belonged to the genuine dragon. Since they shared a common ancestor, Zen was sure the cyan dragon could help. He soon received a response from the cyan dragon. It seemed like there wouldn't be much of a problem. This put Zen's mind at ease. You guys wait a moment. Once this lamp is extinguished, you can go in. Not before that, the Soul Sea Realm Master told Zen and his companions. There was a hint of warning in his voice. Very soon, Zen saw a black shadow rushing into the cemetery at an incredible speed. At the very instant the black shadow touched the periphery of the cemetery, the lamp suddenly exploded into a dazzling light and viciously shot towards the shadow. This light is also a type of soul attack, Zen remarked inwardly as his eyebrows suddenly twitched. There were quite a few miraculous things that the dragon lineage humans had conjured up. However, that black shadow was the soul of a Soul Sea Realm Master. When the light from the lamp shot towards the soul, a part of the soul suddenly changed shape and turned into a shield. He had a way to defend himself. The man actually turned his soul into a shield. Interesting. A smile appeared on Zen's face when he saw this scene. The warrior who was trying to enter the cemetery was at the Soul Sea Realm, but his soul was only at the Fighting Soul Realm. Therefore, he couldn't just withstand the lamp's attacks directly. It was necessary for him to block it. However, considering the current level of Zen's soul, he should be able to directly walk through without suffering too much damage from the lamp. Soon after they witnessed the soul of the Soul Sea Realm Master enter the cemetery, the lamp suddenly flickered and then slowly dimmed down. At that moment, the Soul Sea Realm Masters entered the cemetery one after another as the time was ripe. Zen and the other young warriors followed after. What greeted their eyes was astounding. The massive cemetery they were in seemed to occupy the entire Divine Emperor Island. Exquisite tombstones stood erect on both sides of the road, and the ground was covered in thick dust. It was unknown just how many years it had been since an actual human had set foot in here. Even the people of the 4 divine kingdoms had only used their soul forms to enter this place. Fiona, I reckon that over 1 million corpses of the dragon lineage humans are stored here. After all these years, they would have already turned into bones and dust, right? Zen used his life vitality to communicate with Fiona. However, she had qualms of her own. What Fiona was thinking of was totally beyond Zen's imagination. She was completely oblivious to everyone else's thoughts and was a little worried about something else. Isn't it considered disrespectful to take over others' corpses? Among the younger warriors, only Randy was able to answer Zen's question. He told Zen, as far as I know, the corpses that we are going to take over are not close by. They lie in the depths of this cemetery. The corpses that are buried under these tombstones are all ordinary people, and their corpses never underwent any special treatment. I don't think that there are any remains left underneath the ground we walk on. After so many years, even their bones would have been turned into ashes. Zen nodded his head. What Randy had said made sense. Without the special method that prevented decay, a corpse wouldn't be able to withstand thousands or tens of thousands of years of time. The Soul Sea Realm Masters were leading the way in their soul forms, and the juniors were following them. Although it was dark and gloomy wherever they looked, they had not encountered anything dangerous till now. After they covered some distance, a series of stairs appeared in front of them. On both sides of the stairs were numerous platforms which were arranged like terraces, like the stairs were made for some special appearance. There were huts on these platforms, only about the height of an average person, and even the huts were filled with coffins. Zen raised his head and counted the number of the platforms. These terraced platforms were layered across 13 floors. The number of platforms on the first floor itself was the highest. There were about 1,000 of them, and each platform supported 3 huts. On the second floor, there were 2 huts on each platform. As he looked up, Zen saw that the number of platforms and coffins became fewer and fewer with floor. Many souls arrived at the bottom of the stairs and looked at the platforms. At that moment, a Soul Sea Realm Master told the young warriors, the corpses on these platforms are arranged according to their level of strength and social status when they were alive. Of course, even social status was determined by their strength. The higher the floor, the stronger the corpse. We have brought you here this time just to train you. It's okay if you fail to take over powerful corpses. You just need to be careful of the soul-purifying light that appears on the stairs. The light can instantly eliminate your souls and you will enter a soulless, limbo state and die. With the current strength of your souls, there's no room for resistance. You must be careful, we'll climb up in a while. If the soul-purifying light begins to shine, you guys should enter the platforms on both sides and then you'll be safe. Do you understand? Zen and Fiona didn't quite understand what was going on, but they still nodded their heads. Of course, these powerful warriors at the Soul Sea realm didn't expect this group of juniors to be able to do anything. But since they had obtained so many soul cores, the emperors of the 4 divine kingdoms suddenly felt like they were extremely rich, which was why they had brought these young warriors in here. They wanted them to learn through experience. However, every trial was marked by accidents. That was why there was a special warrior accompanying them whose job was to remind them to pay attention to these things within the Divine Emperor's secret land. As soon as the Soul Sea Realm Master finished speaking, a ray of light came down from the top of the stairs. The light lit up the floors one by one until it reached the bottom floor. Under its bright radiance that ranged from the very top to the very bottom of the stairs, the tens of thousands of steps started to shine brightly as if there was a staircase of light in front of them. The Soul Sea Realm Masters were unfazed by this sight. This was not the first time they had entered the cemetery. When Callan, Fiona, Randy and the others saw the light coming down the stairs, they were filled with imminent fear. The light lasted for about half a minute, and then it dimmed down. Just as the light dimmed, War King Wind, who was standing right in front, ordered quickly, "Everyone, let's move." All the souls quietly shot up the stairs when they heard the order, moving in an orderly, yet quick fashion. Randy, Fiona and the others followed closely behind Zen, who had shot up hastily. Everyone's soul rapidly climbed the stairs, but not even the slightest trace of sound was heard from the company. The soul itself would be unable to make any sound, and could only communicate through one's life vitality. Even if there was any sound, no one else would be able to hear it. For about 30 seconds, they climbed in complete silence. After that, a beam of light suddenly emerged from the top of the stairs and began to spread downwards at an extremely fast pace. "Hold on, get on the platforms," War King Wind ordered, and in an instant, everyone charged towards the platforms on either side. No one was caught in the hasty movement and they all climbed up safely. War King Wind stood on a platform towards the left side of the stairs, and his gaze was locked onto Fiona and Callan. Among all his children, he was most concerned about them. Naturally, he feared that they wouldn't be able to get on the platforms in time and be killed by the soul-purifying light. By the time the wave of soul-purifying light had spread out all the way down, everyone had already jumped onto the platforms on either side, and no one got into trouble. They had only managed to climb up to the second floor, and the platforms came one after the other. Zen took a look at a coffin that lay in one of the 2 huts on the platform that he was standing on. Is the corpse in this coffin intact? He wondered and decided to use his perception to explore the insides of the coffin. Unfortunately, his perception was blocked by the coffin the moment it was released. The coffin seemed to be immune to his power, the same as the spirit shrine. It looked like the same material was used to construct both of those things, and it was able to completely isolate all perceptions from the outside world. Seeing that scene, Randy smiled and told him, "The corpses on the second floor are too weak. They are around the level of an internal elixir realm warrior. They have no value at all. We need to choose the corpses on the upper floors." Zen smiled and nodded. He was well aware of the importance of using powerful corpses if they needed to enter the heavenly stellar secret land. A corpse that was too weak would be difficult to walk even a single inch in that place. Therefore, whether they would risk it or not, choosing powerful corpses was a necessity, if not a compulsion. Zen's gaze shifted towards the top. He had no idea just how strong the corpses on the top floor were. Were they corpses of mighty warriors at the Soul Sea realm? Chapter 869, Danger. Zen himself was uncertain of what corpse he would be able to take over or its strength, but in the end, the higher the floor was, the stronger the corpse would be. The soul-purifying light on the stairs lasted for about 30 seconds before it began to dissipate. War King Wind wasted no time. As soon as the light died, he used his consciousness to give orders to all the warriors. "Move." At his words, all the warriors standing on the platforms on both sides of the stairs charged forward. There would be a 30-second interval before the soul-purifying light lit up again. Taking advantage of this gap, everyone climbed up the next floor. The warriors hastily went up the flight of steps. With a telltale light, the soul-purifying light lit up once again. At once, War King Wind commanded, "Retreat. Go to the platforms." Huts lined the platforms on the 3rd floor to a big number. In strength, however, the corpses inside the coffins in these huts were only at the late stage of the internal elixir realm when they were alive. The strength of the dragon lineage human was far greater than that of the warriors in all the 4 divine kingdoms. Even the 4 divine kingdoms had countless internal elixir realm warriors, so it was only natural that the internal elixir realm warriors from the dragon lineage human would be great in number. However, as Zen looked around the 3rd floor, there were only around 600 to 700 huts. The warriors buried here were undoubtedly among the most important members of the dragon lineage human. They had perished at a young age, and this cemetery served as the resting place for their corpses. Zen did not give the coffins a second glance. These corpses were far too weak, and they would be of no use to him. Meanwhile, the whole cemetery held its breath as the warriors stood in silence, awaiting War King Wind's next orders. The soul-purifying light was a fatal threat to souls, and the actions of over 100 people had to be in perfect coordination. The slightest hesitation or the split second of untimely movement would cost them their souls, turning them into soulless cadavers. Warriors, keep your guards up. The soul-purifying light is spreading from top to bottom. The higher up we go, the shorter the time we have. War King Wind stared at the soul-purifying light, watching it dim once again. The moment it disappeared, he gave orders once again. Go, he commanded. Without hesitating, pausing, or delaying, the warriors once again ascended the stairs in perfect unison. Disperse, War King Wind ordered. Everyone jumped to the platforms on the either side of the stairs. When he landed on a platform, War King Wind looked back. His eyes grew wide as his heart sank in his chest. His daughter was still standing on the stairs. Fiona had missed her father's orders. Just as everyone was jumping to the platforms, she took a few steps towards the side of the stairs, seemingly observing the words of the dragon lineage human engraved on a coffin. She had been so absorbed with it that she lost track of everything around her. War King Wind's orders had failed to bring her out of her reverie. She was a lone figure left standing on the stairs. Everyone else had already jumped onto a safe place. War King Wind watched in horror as the soul-purifying light covered the stairs at a fast pace. The soul-purifying light was much stronger than the cemetery guarding lamp at the entrance. Even a mighty warrior at the Soul Sea realm would be no match for its power. War King Wind was rooted to the spot as he watched his daughter in the face of such danger. Fiona. Callan was very anxious. Although he was not that smart, he was always very serious and did not allow the slightest distraction to break his guard. After War King Wind gave the orders, Callan also followed the group to the 4th floor. But then there was Fiona, standing alone in front of the quickly approaching soul-purifying light. Without any hesitation, he rushed out to save her. However, before he could leap, a Soul Sea Realm Master had reacted quickly and stood in front of him to block his path. The soul-purifying light had already lit up, slowly going down from the top of the stairs. In just a few seconds, it would reach the 4th floor. Even Callan's attempt to save her would be nothing but suicide. All the warriors turned to look at Fiona, their eyes widening in fear. Fiona was a gifted warrior with much promise. As a descendant of the genuine phoenix and with a genuine phoenix as her contractual beast, she would not lose even to the top talents of the upper world after she ascended to the upper world in the future. She was destined for a greatness that far exceeded any of the Soul Sea Realm Masters present. She was not meant to die in here today. War King Wind felt as if the sky was falling on him as he watched his daughter with great despair and anguish. And yet, there was nothing he could do to help her. Even though his soul was the most powerful among those of the Soul Sea Realm warriors present, he didn't dare to touch the soul-purifying light. Therefore, he didn't have enough time to run towards Fiona and save her. As the warriors watched, a figure suddenly rushed out. Thad Luo, come back, Thad, don't go, Turner shouted. Even if Zen's soul was stronger than that of any other warrior present, time was his adversary. If the soul-purifying light touched him, he would be instantly eliminated. Everyone else's soul was dispensable compared to his. Zen was the hope of all the Soul Sea Realm warriors to restore the path to the upper world. Soon, all of the warriors called out to him, asking him to stay on the platform. However, it was as if their pleas had fallen to deaf ears. Zen did not listen to them. His soul turned into a black shadow as he moved forward. The soul-purifying light had already spread down the stairs. The soul-purifying light surged out from the top stairs. Within a few seconds, all the stairs above the 4th floor were completely covered in its blinding light, which was extending to the 4th floor. In just a few moments, the remaining stairs would be filled by its deadly glow. At this crucial moment, Zen simply did not have the time to check how far the soul-purifying light was from him. He rushed towards Fiona, grabbed her in his arms, and continued to rush forward. Bringing her back to the 4th floor would be impossible in such a short period of time. And so, he used the momentum to rush to the right platform on the 3rd floor. It had only been a hair's breadth. The soul-purifying light spread under Zen's feet the moment he leapt. The platform on the 3rd floor shook as Zen and Fiona landed, propelling them downwards. They landed heavily on the platform on the 2nd floor. The moment he fell, Zen turned around and placed Fiona on top of him, using his own soul as a cushion. Zen's soul was tenacious, but Fiona's was different. One's soul had the fragility of a newborn baby before entering the fighting soul realm. Fiona's soul had undergone training, but it was still delicate. Fiona, sitting on top of Zen absently, was still unable to break off from her daze. She had hesitated earlier, and it had almost cost her soul. In retrospect, even if she had been unable to advance with the others, she could have hidden on a platform on the 3rd floor and waited until the wave of soul-purifying light dissipated. Once it had disappeared, she could charge forward once again. However, she had been overcome at the face of her looming death and was petrified. A long sigh of relief resounded as the Soul Sea Realm Masters watched the pair out of harm's way. War King Wind was filled with gratitude. After entering the Soul Sea Realm, he did not have much to worry about, and his attention was mostly on his daughter. Even if he succeeded in exploring the heavenly stellar secret land, it would be an empty victory if he lost Fiona. The other Soul Sea Realm Masters were also relieved, though it had been more for Zen than Fiona. He was their only hope to go to the upper world. If he died here, all their efforts would have been for nothing. To them, Fiona's life would be a small price to pay if it meant Zen's safety. The staircase continued to flash with the soul-purifying light. Fiona stood up from Zen's body and communicated with him with her consciousness. "Thank you," she said. Zen smiled and answered, "It's fine. Let's keep going." War King Wind no longer led the group up the stairs. Instead, he waited for Zen and Fiona on the 4th floor. Chapter 870, Occupation. It wasn't that difficult to climb the stairs in the cemetery. As long as they seized the opportunity to make a move, they would meet no danger. Over the years, other than the first time that a Soul Sea Realm martial artist had died without knowing the situation in the tomb, no one else from the 4 divine kingdoms had ever died in it. Zen and Fiona carefully returned to the 4th floor after the soul-purifying light had extinguished twice. As soon as the two of them were in front of him, War King Wind expressed his gratitude to Zen. Then he and his men began to climb the stairs in the cemetery again. Most of the Soul Sea Realm martial artists managed to safely make it to the 5th, 6th, and 7th floors with more ease. But as they climbed higher, the time between each soul-purifying light became shorter and shorter. For them, the pressure wasn't too great. However, to virtual tribulation realm martial artists like Fiona and Bram, the pressure was immensely greater. "Bram, Randy, climbing up is too difficult for you. Even if you make it there, you probably won't be able to occupy the bodies of those powerful martial artists. This floor should be your limit, so try to dwell on the corpses here," Turner said with his soul power. Although these martial artists had been dead for countless years, it was never an easy task to inhabit their corpses. The soul core could minimize the repulsion of the corpses, but the stronger the corpses were, the stronger the repulsive force would be. Bram, Randy, Fiona, and the other martial artists of the younger generation all nodded in agreement. Although they all had entered the Divine Emperor's secret land with the help of the elder generation, it was a trial for them. But they were not required to obtain anything from this journey. "Let me help you open this coffin." War King Wind walked swiftly to the side of the platform. When he entered the hut, he purposely stood next to a coffin near him. Briefly, he closed his eyes and said a few words to himself before communicating through his consciousness, "These corpses have been here for countless years. You have to respect them." As he muttered these words, he stretched out his hands. Then like a wind, his hands changed their shapes and flowed smoothly along the grooves on the side of the coffin. When he felt that a part of his soul invaded the edge of the coffin, his soul fluctuated slightly, signifying that the soul power of the fighting soul realm had burst out, thus lifting the coffin before everyone's eyes. Inside the coffin was a woman at the life and death realm. Historically, it was unknown just what method the dragon lineage human used to preserve the corpses. Even after so many years, it still hadn't shown any signs of decay. The woman still maintained her peerless appearance, wearing a light blue palace uniform. Apart from the pale complexion, she looked as if she was only sleeping. War King Wind asked, "Who will do it?" The moment he raised that question, everyone looked at him in surprise. Among the martial artists of the younger generation, only the crown princes and other outstanding princes could follow the kings here. And Fiona happened to be the only woman among them. Seeing everyone's confounded expression, War King Wind smiled awkwardly and stated, "Fiona, you control this corpse." Fiona's eyes blinked. She stared fixedly at the body within the coffin and then nodded. Okay. Controlling a corpse was different from possessing one's body shell. And imbuing one's own soul into the corpse was not even a wonderful experience at all. However, it was the only way to enter the heavenly stellar secret land. Soon after, Fiona leapt onto the coffin as if she had no choice left. She looked hesitant as she looked at her father. War King Wind gave her a slight smile. Walking beside the coffin, he extended his hand and pressed it on the corpse's head. As if on cue, the corpse suddenly opened its mouth, and its eyes were also wide open. Fiona was a girl, after all. Although she acknowledged that the corpse wasn't frightening, she couldn't still hide her shock. Don't be afraid, just merge with it, War King Wind encouraged her. Fiona surveyed the corpse once more. Her face now was filled with grim determination. Then she began to drill into it. Shortly after, rays of grey light projected out from the head of the corpse. This light was the energy of the soul core which had fused with the soul previously. But after Fiona successfully merged with the corpse, it started to spread throughout the corpse. Occupying a corpse was completely different from taking one's body shell. The latter did not require the help of the soul core because the person being possessed was a living person with an intact body. It would only harm his soul. These corpses had already been existent for countless years. And it was apparent that all of their blood had dried up a long time ago. In this case, the soul core must be used to have their body activated forcibly. When the grey light merged fully with the corpse, the woman's fingers gingerly moved. Then after a few moments, her closed eyes suddenly opened slowly. Everyone stood there watching the whole scene when the corpse climbed out from the coffin. It had an extremely stiff posture. It was like a puppet that was not controlled well, as it took a tentative few steps forward in a strange way. Fiona couldn't control the corpse well at first. She was having a hard time, but her movements soon became more and more skilled. After some time of getting used to it, she pressed her legs together, and she stood in a very ladylike posture as she usually did, looking elegant. Zen revealed a faint smile and continued to wear an amused expression as he thought that even though she was controlling a corpse, she still maintained her original habits. I can control it now, Fiona exclaimed. Her voice completely changed as she was controlling a corpse. Good job, War King Wind acknowledged. We will help you open the other coffins, and then you can occupy the corpses. At his words, several powerful warriors of the Soul Sea realm came forward and began opening the coffins, revealing the corpses. Except for the first one, which was a palace lady, the rest were all found to be males. All of these men wore golden armor. And they even had top-grade sacred weapons placed on their sides, which were more likely burial items. Randy, Crown Prince Bram, Callan, and the other princes occupied a corpse respectively without much further ado. The whole process did not take too much time in its entirety. It only took about 5 minutes. After they had taken possession of the corpses, Turner then turned his gaze towards Zen. He was wondering if Zen could pick a corpse as well. He also contemplated the fact that Zen was still a member of the younger generation in the eyes of those powerful warriors of the Soul Sea realm, even if he had already advanced to the life and death realm, and his own strength was hard to estimate. The heavenly stellar secret land was indeed a place that was not easy to infiltrate. And a warrior must consider challenging a strong corpse to get through. With this, Zen obviously wouldn't casually choose a corpse. Long before they could say anything, Zen had already floated out, I'll go up with you. War King Wind chuckled and said, Thad's soul is already close to the Jasper fighting soul realm. It is much stronger than our souls. Surely, you have the qualifications to go up. So Zen followed the group of Soul Sea realm martial artists as they continued to climb up while avoiding the soul-purifying light. Fiona, Randy, and the others had their souls penetrated deep into their minds. Since they were all encased in bodies, the soul-purifying light wouldn't cause any damage to them. Hence, they didn't need to dodge the light at all but walked up the steps at ease. They all continued climbing up. On the 8th, 9th and 10th floors, the number of coffins became fewer and fewer while the corpses within the coffins became more and more powerful. Starting from the 10th floor, the corpses in the coffins had already reached the Soul Sea realm. I will choose this floor. A Soul Sea realm martial artist stopped and occupied one of the corpses on the 10th floor with no qualms. His soul seemed to have just entered the fighting soul realm. If not for Zen excavating so many soul cores, he wouldn't have been able to enter the tomb this year. Besides, he wasn't confident in his soul's strength. Even if he went up there, he might die. So he decided to occupy a corpse on this floor. Still, on the 10th floor, powerful warriors of the Soul Sea realm started to choose their own corpses one after another. On the 11th, And the 12th floors, there were already 60 to 70 Soul Sea Realm martial artists who had already occupied a corpse. When they reached the 13th floor, most of them had already controlled a corpse, so they all came up the stairs with their bodies. Only Zen, Turner, War King Wind, War Emperor York, and Scott had not chosen a corpse yet. The 5 of them set their gazes on the 13th floor, surveying the area. Chapter 871, Alessandro Fung. There was no longer any need to avoid the soul-purifying light at the time Zen and the other 4 rulers stepped onto the 13th floor, given that it was the top floor. The top floor was an open, circular platform wherein one could enjoy the view of the entire Divine Emperor's secret land, except, there wasn't really any view to enjoy. The entire scenery consisted of corpses and graveyards, and nobody really appreciated looking at dead bodies. On the platform were coffins arranged in an orderly manner. The corpses placed within the structure, from the 1st to the 13th floor, were no doubt core members of the dragon lineage human. Each coffin that they had passed by on every floor was exquisitely well crafted. However, they couldn't compare to the coffins that were on the top floor. Mysterious divine textures had been carved onto the surface of the rich, elaborately crafted coffins. Most of the runes glowed brightly, indicating their activation. Zen was immediately filled with curiosity upon the sight. These divine textures needed a continuous supply of life vitality in order to keep running. Could it be that there was a massive life vitality crystal buried underneath this cemetery? It was the only explanation he could think of as he looked at these still active runes. How could this be? Just how many life vitality crystals could be enough to keep them active? He couldn't help but voice out his thoughts. Zen figured that not even one massive life vitality crystal would be enough to keep these divine textures running for thousands of years, given that the dragon lineage human had been destroyed in the blood sacrifice more than 10,000 years ago. Turner smiled at Zen's puzzled expression. These divine textures don't get energy through life vitality crystals. Just look at the ground and you'll understand. Zen followed Turner's instructions and looked down. Indeed, there was a huge divine texture that was also carved onto the ground. Zen could recognize the divine texture and immediately understood. This was a 7-star divine texture, spiritual energy gather. It was an extremely important divine texture, as emphasized by the Cyan Dragon when he taught Zen the divine texture techniques. This spiritual energy gather that the divine textures on the coffins relied on to keep running could continuously gather the spiritual energy between heaven and earth and transform it into life vitality. However, these coffins are all engraved with divine textures. It would be a little difficult to occupy the bodies in the coffins, right? Zen asked. Yes, the owners of these corpses were all at the top level of Soul Sea Realm. They were probably stronger than us when they were alive, Turner told him. Zen wasn't wrong when he assumed that the bodies inside these coffins would be hard to occupy. In fact, there was only one successful case recorded in the 4 divine kingdoms. That was 36 years ago, and the person that managed to do it was War King Wind. It was with the help of a powerful corpse from the 13th floor that he was able to further explore the heavenly stellar secret land. However, that was the first and last time War King Wind had succeeded. The 4 country leaders had tried time and again to take over the corpses of the 13th floor, but none of them ever succeeded. Every time they failed, they would be forced to take over the 12th floor's corpses instead. From this, one could imagine how difficult it was to take over the top floor's corpses. Why is it so difficult? Zen couldn't help but ask with curiosity. Even if these corpses had been top-level Soul Sea Realm masters and had been stronger than Turner and the others when they were alive, the gap shouldn't be that large. Turner, War King Wind, and the others were all at the top level of Soul Sea Realm, after all. The only reason why they hadn't gone any further with their cultivation was only due to the limited resources in the lower world. The reason is actually very simple, Turner said, smiling to him bitterly. We can't remember any of their names. Zen was taken aback by this explanation. It made him even more confused. What? Turner's consciousness drifted over to communicate with him. You will understand in a bit. The corpses here on the top floor belong to the most important people in the dragon lineage human. How can they allow other people to desecrate their bodies? Of course they'd make it hard for someone to occupy their bodies. War Emperor York, Scott, and War King Wind walked along the platform, followed closely by the other Soul Sea Realm masters. Scott stopped in front of a snow-white coffin surrounded by several small trees. These trees had been growing by the side of the coffin for thousands of years now, but not one was even tall enough as a person. Name? Scott's consciousness spread out and asked the question. The owner of this corpse was called Alessandro Fung. He was once the leader of the sacred land of the dragon lineage human and has been dead for 40,000 years, a Soul Sea Realm master answered. This was the dragon lineage humans' graveyard, and those that lay here must have died long before their people's destruction. Alessandro Fung. Alessandro Fung. Scott's consciousness kept repeating the name. Scott's actions made Zen even more curious. Was the name really that important? Why was there a need to repeat it over and over again? Zen was completely at a loss. Once Scott repeated the name a couple dozen times, he called out, "Open the coffin, I'm ready." It would be difficult for Scott, who was still in the form of his soul, to open the coffin given that his soul was still at the fighting soul realm. Luckily, there were already many soul sea realm warriors who had occupied bodies for their own. It wasn't as good as their own living, breathing bodies, but the soul sea realm masters could still display around 70% of their full strength while occupying another's corpse. Several of them came over and attempted to open Alessandro Feng's coffin. An important figure surely had strong protective measures implemented in his final resting place. The coffin shook violently when the Soul Sea Realm Masters made a move to open it, and the divine texture carved on it flickered like crazy. Buzz buzz buzz. As the coffin trembled, there was a loud, unmistakable roar of a fierce dragon. Roar. A couple of small dragons formed by life vitality shot out from a divine texture and immediately headed for the Soul Sea Realm Masters. A 6-star divine texture, Cyan Dragon Seal, Zen quickly realized as he looked at those small dragons. A 5-star divine texture was enough to defend against a life and death realm master, while a 6-star divine texture was enough to defend against a powerful soul sea realm master. However, the 6-star divine texture couldn't really go against so many powerful soul sea realm masters that abounded on the platform. It also helped that the soul sea realm masters that had opened the coffin were incredibly skilled. Right after they activated the Cyan Dragon Seal, they immediately gave up trying to open the coffin and lured the dragons to chase after them instead. Just as they ran away, several other powerful Soul Sea Realm Masters approached the coffin and started attacking the 6-star divine texture. The divine texture quickly shattered under their combined efforts, which made the 7 to 8 small, life vitality dragons slowly dissipate as well. During this entire debacle, Scott merely stood to the side and continuously repeated Alessandro Feng's name over and over again. He didn't even pay any attention when the dragons suddenly showed up and tried to chase the others. It looks like that name is really important, Zen couldn't help but surmise. Once the defensive rune was broken, the Soul Sea Realm Masters quickly put their borrowed bodies to work and slowly opened the coffin. Inside lay a silver-haired, middle-aged man, Alessandro Feng himself. Even with his eyes closed as a corpse, a powerful, domineering aura still emanated from him, indicating his superiority as a being. The 4 rulers also had this aura, but not as sharp as Alessandro Feng's. He was, undoubtedly, a top master at the Soul Sea Realm when he was still alive. Perhaps he was even the strongest martial artist of the great world during his time. Scott immediately grew wary as he was hit by the corpse's aura, but he didn't dwell too much on it. He turned around and gave a nod to the other 3 rulers before suddenly jumping into the coffin. The moment he entered Alessandro Feng's body, Scott immediately stretched out his hand and pressed the spot between the corpse's eyebrows. The corpse opened its mouth as if on reflex, and Scott's soul quickly entered through it. The soul core's power spread throughout the corpse's body very quickly. It went through its arms, legs, and viscera. Shortly after, the tall and sturdy body of Alessandro Feng crawled out from the coffin. Chapter 872, hard to say the name. It was clear that Scott was far more powerful than Fiona. As Fiona tried to control her corpse, her movements seemed stiff, like that of a wooden doll. She could barely even walk properly. As soon as Scott entered the corpse, he appeared quite naturally, as if the body was his own. After he climbed out, he hopped up and firmly stood on the ground. Still, his experience was something to be considered. Having entered the Divine Emperor's secret land countless times already, Scott was naturally much more skilled than Fiona in controlling corpses. When he climbed out, he put a palm to his forehead, revealing an expression of pain. At this time, the one in pain was certainly not Alessandro, for he had been dead for many years already. It was Scott who was in great pain, this time. Simultaneously, in the middle of the platform on the top floor, a stone pillar suddenly began to rise. Crunch, crunch, crunch. The pillar was at least 20 feet wide. While it had always been in the center of the platform, having itself suddenly appear came as a shock to Zen. The other Soul Sea Realm Masters, however, seemed to be used to it. As the pillar slowly rose up, Zen's eyebrows furrowed in more confusion. 4 table-sized rivets were in the middle of the pillar. Similarly, 4 pitch-black chains were hanging on the end of the rivets, extending toward a coffin in the middle, keeping it locked tight. This coffin was rather unique. With its azure color, it was a transparent, crystal coffin. Since it was embedded in the stone pillar, tightly locked by chains, the person inside couldn't lie down properly. At that moment, she was standing inside the coffin. Inside it was a young girl, dressed in thin, white, unlined clothes. Her bare legs were firmly locked in place by the black chains extending to the crystal coffin. What a beautiful young lady! Who was she? The crown prince of the Wind Divine Kingdom muttered as he gazed upon the girl inside. Indeed, while he was used to seeing beautiful women every day, he still couldn't help but marvel at the girl's beauty. Looking at her for a short while, Zen couldn't figure out what was going on in front of them. While everyone had their eyes fixed on her, her eyes suddenly opened. Her golden orbs then fixed down on everyone. Even Fiona was carefully examining the girl. Women tended to be extremely sensitive to looks, even when it came to a mere corpse. The corpse that Fiona occupied was elegant, but its beauty still didn't match that of the soul occupying it. But the young girl's corpse was even more beautiful than Fiona. Catching the young girl in the act of opening her eyes shocked Fiona speechless. Zen, Kala, and even the other warriors were rather scared. Only the other Soul Sea Realm Masters showed no surprise, having witnessed the scene every time they entered the place before. But a flash of worry could be seen in their eyes as they looked at Alessandro's corpse, occupied by Scott. Meanwhile, Scott was clutching his head as he staggered along the platform. Although he seemed to be in pain earlier, he managed to hold his head when the girl opened her eyes. While still stumbling around, Scott slowly approached. All of a sudden, he unconsciously fell to his knees, allowing his forehead to hit the ground. It was clear that the corpse was extremely powerful. Not only was his head left uninjured, but it managed to crack the area it made an impact on. Simultaneously, massive pressure was released from the young girl's body. But this force was directed only at Scott. You are the brave warrior of the dragon lineage human. Since you have recovered, do not forget your mission and become a zombie. Answer my question, what is your name? She asked indifferently. Name. Hearing this, Zen raised his eyebrows in surprise as he remembered Turner's words. Could it be that they couldn't remember the names? Alessandro Fung was his name, and he was a known Soul Sea Realm Master before his death. Perhaps, Scott could remember it easily. But to everyone's surprise, Scott banged his head on the ground and continued making mournful sounds as he uttered, my name is Alessandro Fung. Your Majesty, it's Alessandro Fung. Alessandro, several of the Soul Sea Realm Masters reminded. Even though they were shouting, Scott seemed unable to hear them. In a vague voice, he cried out, my name is Ailes, my name is. The word, Alessandro, seemed too difficult for him to say, at that point. Tell me what your name is, the young girl flatly repeated. Helpless, Scott grew increasingly miserable. My name is. Once again, the girl asked, say your name or I will treat you as a person who has lost himself. I will reject your recovery. My name is Scott Liu. In the end, he couldn't say, Alessandro. But at the very least, he managed to utter his name. The Soul Sea Realm Masters were filled with disappointment at the scene. Regretfully, Turner commented, alas. He failed this time. After the name was announced, the young girl inside the crystal coffin gave her judgment, you've already lost yourself. When she finished speaking, Alessandro's corpse began to tremble violently before Scott's soul was forced out of the body. After his soul was ejected, Alessandro's corpse began moving, heading straight for his own coffin to lie back down. At this moment, the young girl slowly closed her eyes again. While the warriors present couldn't feel any breath or life vitality from the girl, she undoubtedly had her eyes open as if she were alive. It was truly strange. As Scott's soul gently floated in the air, a trace of regret surfaced on his face. Alas, this woman's will is just too difficult for me to resist. When her will enveloped me I couldn't remember the name Wind. How did you manage to say the name? Forcing a smile, War King Wind replied, I've already told you many times, I really don't have any impression of it. I don't even know how I answered. Maybe I was just lucky enough to say the right name by chance. Only then did Zen truly understand. In fact, the dragon lineage humans didn't expect the 4 divine kingdoms to use the soul cores to manipulate their corpses. They still kept the corpses of the top masters to deal with some of their other affairs. But as the corpses were preserved in such a way, it was extremely likely that they would become zombies. To avoid this situation, the dragon lineage humans set up a method to deal with this in the cemetery. If the corpse really became a zombie, then the young girl would test the corpse's mind. If that body didn't pass the test, then the soul would be ejected straight out of the corpse. However, they had never expected that the souls that were removed belonged to human beings. Don't be discouraged, Scott, can you try again? War King Wind tried to comfort him. Shaking his head, Scott responded, well, I'll go to the 12th floor and choose a corpse. Wind, Turner, Lucian, you can have a try. As soon as he finished speaking, the soul-purifying light on the stairs faded away before Scott shot toward the 12th floor. With that, War King Wind and Turner looked at each other. Okay, let me do it this time, War King Wind exclaimed. With that, he circled the platform. Instead of choosing Alessandro's corpse, he stopped on top of a black coffin. When War King Wind's soul stopped, a Soul Sea Realm master behind him said, this is the leader of the dragon lineage human from 70,000 years ago. His name is Hank Feng, it's easier to remember his name. Chapter 873, Federico Feng. People belonging to the 4 divine kingdoms knew everything about the corpses in those coffins. They had spent years investigating them thoroughly in order to control the corpses. It wasn't an easy task, learning the corpses, names and retaining them. Given the names weren't hard to remember, fusing their souls with the corpses caused the corpses to instinctively reject them. And being interrogated by the girl who was sealed in the stone pillar would cause the memories in their souls to become confused, making it hard for them to remember the names of the corpses. War King Wind had once succeeded in saying the correct name, but he couldn't remember how he had managed to do it, and his success had been the only one in all these years. When the masters of the Soul Sea Realm opened the coffin, they saw a thin old man lying within it. This man was Hank Feng, the one they had spoken of. War King Wind's soul entered the old man's corpse through his mouth. Not long after, his soul merged with Hank's corpse and controlled it such that it slowly climbed out of the coffin. But the corpse seemed to be rejecting War King Wind's soul rather strongly. As War King Wind controlled the corpse, trying to make it walk, it staggered like a drunken man and involuntarily moved towards the stone pillar. The following moments were most crucial. Only by saying the right name of the corpse could he escape control of the girl in the pillar. Since Scott had already failed, they thought that the chances of War King Wind succeeding were slim. As expected, the corpse's face twisted under the girl's interrogation, as if in pain. It shook severely, trying and failing to speak out the name, Hank Feng. He ended up facing the same fate as Scott. The soul was forcefully ejected out by the mysterious girl in the pillar. War King Wind was dejected and it showed on his face. But he didn't go to the 12th floor to choose a corpse, like Scott had done. Instead, he fell into deep thought, wanting to try once again. But War Emperor York and Turner were in no hurry to give it a try. They walked around the coffins and tried to think of a good solution. In the past, the people of the 4 divine kingdoms couldn't take even a single step into the Feather Emperor's secret land, the Divine Emperor's secret land and the mysterious Dream secret land, let alone the Heavenly Stellar secret land. After years of scouting, they gradually found ways of entering the first 3 secret lands. If they could find a way to easily obtain the corpses of the ancient warriors at the top floor, they would be able to explore the whole Heavenly Stellar secret land someday. But the 4 divine kingdoms hadn't come up with any method to solve this problem. Zen frowned as he watched the 3 emperors hesitate. As Turner had pointed out, this was indeed a matter of names. If they could clearly say the right names of the corpses in front of the girl, they would be able to obtain the corpses. Was it really that difficult to speak out a few words? War King Wind and Scott had repeatedly memorized the names. It was impossible for them to forget the names, and there were others on the sidelines who constantly reminded them. But despite all that, they had failed to say the right names. Names. An idea suddenly occurred to Zen, and his eyes flashed with excitement. He walked up to a coffin. Thad, do you also want to give it a try? Turner asked. Most Soul Sea Realm masters also looked at Zen. Although his cultivation base wasn't high, his abilities couldn't be measured with common sense. Maybe he could think up a good solution. As this thought crossed their minds, they became excited. One of them said to Zen, the owner of this coffin is called Federico Feng. He was the most powerful warrior among the dragon lineage humans. According to the information we've got, he was born with superhuman strength. Federico Feng, Federico Feng. Zen repeated the name twice to himself. Shall we help you open the coffin now? Another warrior at the Soul Sea Realm asked. Please wait a moment, Zen replied. He did not choose to open the coffin and occupy Federico's corpse directly. Instead, he returned to the side of the stone pillar. What is Thad trying to do? I'm not sure. I don't understand. It looks like he wants to carve something on the stone pillar. Could it be that he wants to carve the name of the corpse on it? But that will not work. The powerful warriors at the Soul Sea realm had left no stone unturned in order to occupy the corpses on that floor. Some of them had tried to carve the names on the pillar before. But they hadn't been able to remember the names irrespective of whether others whispered the names to them or whether the names were carved into the wall. Standing beside the stone pillar, Zen stretched out a finger and transformed it into a sharp shape. With a light wave of his finger, he began to carve words onto the stone pillar. He was carving the name, Federico Feng, on the pillar, but indirectly. He was using the letters that spelt the name. The names of the dragon lineage human were still written in the human language. Zen believed that even if he couldn't remember the name directly, he could at least record the words by spelling them out. Zen carved the letters one by one onto the stone pillar. He then returned to coffin and smiled as he said, "All right, I'm ready now." The Soul Sea Realm warriors were surprised at Zen's actions but didn't say anything. They wanted to see if Zen's plan would succeed. If it worked, they could follow suit afterwards. So they broke the rune on the coffin and opened it. The coffin was a little longer than the others. It revealed a burly man lying within it, two huge gold axes lying beside the body. Without any hesitation, Zen took his space ring from his finger and placed it beside the coffin. The space ring was very important to him, which was why he had taken it with his soul instead of leaving it with his body. Once the preparations had been made, Zen's soul rushed towards the burly man's corpse. He opened the burly man's mouth like the others had done and entered the corpse through the mouth. Soon, his soul settled in so that it felt like it had reached the body's brain. But the moment he tried to merge his soul into the corpse, he felt a strong force of expulsion. Usually, warriors had to destroy their opponents' souls if they wanted to steal their body shells. This warrior called Federico had died many years ago. His soul had already disappeared or had entered samsara. This meant that Zen wasn't stealing his body shell but was simply obtaining his corpse. However, when a warrior cultivated to such a high level, an unchangeable power still remained within his body even if he had been dead for many years. And because of this, even if some powerful warriors passed away in the wilderness, no wild beasts would dare approach their corpses. The powerful repelling force within the corpse was driving Zen's soul out of it. If it had been an ordinary fighting soul, it might have been instantly driven out of the corpse's brain. That was why most Soul Sea Realm warriors of the 4 divine kingdoms had chosen the corpses of the 11th and 12th floors. They knew that it was too difficult for their souls to obtain the corpses of the 13th floor. Zen's soul was much stronger than that of a normal Soul Sea Realm warrior and even the 4 emperors, not to mention that he had fused with the will of the great world. His soul ignored the repulsive force and directly occupied the brain. However, even though his soul had merged with the brain, he was still unable to control the corpse. He had to wait for the soul core's power to spread and fuse with the corpse. Streams of gray light surged through the man's body. After a few seconds, Zen gradually regained some of his senses, finally feeling his limbs again. He soon felt that he could control this corpse as his own. Get up. Zen tried to rise from the coffin. But it was a little harder than he thought. As he made to stand up, he tottered unsteadily on his feet and fell back into the coffin. Although Zen's movements looked funny, no one laughed at him. With his current age and cultivation base, it was his pride and joy to be able to obtain this corpse. Few moments later, Zen jumped up smoothly to his feet. His burly body was like a steel tower as he firmly stood on the ground. His eyes were the size of saucers as he opened them and looked around. Chapter 874, Spirit Supreme Realm. Everyone had gotten used to Zen's lanky figure. It was awkward for them to watch Zen as he took on the tall and sturdy body of the corpse. Randy, Fiona, and Callan were some of the few people who looked at Zen and began to grin. A faint smile appeared on Zen's face as he casually took a few steps forward. It hadn't taken him long to freely control this corpse. But all wasn't smooth. He suddenly felt a wave of pressure on his body. A red ripple spread out of nowhere in the empty mind of the corpse. The surroundings in his mind turned blood red. The pressure wasn't from the outside world but emanated from the corpse itself. Zen had gained control of the corpse through the soul core. But now, he found that he couldn't control it at all. It waddled towards the stone pillar as Zen struggled and failed to control it. Here comes the question. Zen became cautious. He had previously seen War King Wind and Scott go through this process. They had not been able to resist the orders of the young girl in the stone pillar and couldn't help but walk involuntarily towards the pillar. But this wasn't what worried Zen. The probability that he might not be able to say the corpse's name when questioned posed a greater worry for him. Federico Feng. Zen repeated the name in his heart. He felt the corpse stagger all the way and fall to its knees with a thud in front of the stone pillar. At the same time, he felt the blood-red ripple in his mind grow stronger and stronger. He knew that it was this blood-red ripple that completely isolated Zen's soul from the corpse. In this moment, Zen felt everything become distant from him. Someone seemed to be talking to Zen, but he couldn't hear a single word. The sound seemed to be coming from the sky, soft and harsh. His thoughts had become a mess. "Answer me, your name." The young girl's voice came from the stone pillar. My name. Through all the mental chaos, Zen could not remember the name of this corpse. It's very strange. I can't remember what this corpse is called at all. I clearly remembered it a moment ago. Zen thought dejectedly. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't recall anything about this corpse. "Tell me your name, or all." The young girl's voice was clear, and Zen could hear every word she said. If he could not remember the name, he would be kicked out of this corpse's mind. Zen had seen how War King Wind and Scott had bounced back from the bodies they had planned to occupy because they had failed to remember the corpses' names. But the more he became anxious, the less likely it was that anything would come to his mind. It was as if the name had been completely erased from his memory. Name. What's the name? As Zen searched frantically for the name in his mind, his gaze penetrated the red ripples and landed on the stone pillar. Name. The letters. Zen had applied a special words memorizing method, disassembled the name of the corpse, and carved the letters on the stone pillar. As long as he restored the name using the letters, he would be able to get the name. Fede. Zen looked at the letters on the stone pillar. It was true that Zen's thoughts had fallen into chaos, but the young girl in the stone pillar only affected a part of his mind, not all of it. According to the letters that Zen had left on the stone pillar, it wasn't that difficult to retrieve the name. The first name is Federico. He continued to work on the letters. Feng. The last name is Feng. It was true that he had spelled out the name, but right now, Zen had a very strange feeling about these two words. The words Federico Feng were very common words, but he suddenly realized that he couldn't recognize them at all. These two words had, for some strange reason, become incomparably foreign to Zen's eyes. This was weird and troubled Zen greatly. He had obtained the words Federico Feng through a special words memorizing method, but he was unfamiliar with the words he had worked out and could not recognize them. Zen felt helpless. The red ripple spread through his mind faster than Zen could react, and quickly, too quickly, his soul was forced out of the corpse. Federico's corpse staggered back to the coffin and slowly lay down. The collective hope of the others plummeted as they beheld this scene. It was obvious to them that Zen had failed to fight the young girl's will. "How do you feel?" Turner asked, smiling. He had expected this. Zen chuckled and said, "I've already spelled these two words out. I know that the owner of this corpse is called Federico Feng." Oh, everyone's eyes lit up as they heard what Zen had to say. Did this mean Zen's method had worked? But Zen shrugged and said, "It's useless even if I have them spelled out. The will of the young girl in the pillar is irresistible. I guess there's only one way to successfully pronounce the corpse's name." "What is it?" War King Wind asked. "Instinct. Only by relying on instinct can we pronounce a corpse's name. It's actually impossible for us, the occupants of their bodies, to do so," Zen said. "From the time of one's birth till death, the only thing that remained unchanged was one's name. Unless one became an idiot, no one would ever forget their own name. It almost became an instinct for anyone to pronounce their own name. That was why some people had failed to pronounce the corpses' names in front of the girl in the stone pillar. They had given her their own names instead. Only by relying on one's own instincts could one get rid of chaotic thoughts. The problem, however, was that it was extremely difficult to accomplish this. It was probably impossible for a normal person to do this. Unless the person was schizophrenic and a part of the person's mind fantasized day and night that he was someone else. If this went on, the person would be no different from a lunatic. Zen's analysis made sense to everyone. War King Wind's success from many years ago could probably only be attributed to luck. "But it looks like we still failed this time," Turner said gloomily. The difficulty of exploring the heavenly stellar secret land far surpassed that of the other three secret lands. Without the help of the most powerful corpses, they wouldn't be able to take out the ancestral dragon egg. They were still unable to occupy the bodies of the corpses on the 13th floor. And this meant that it was impossible for them to obtain anything good from the heavenly stellar secret land. But before they could do anything, Zen smiled and said, "Since I can't occupy the corpses that are in these coffins, I can change the target." "Change the target? Do you mean the corpses on the 12th floor?" War King Wind asked. Zen kept smiling, his gaze flitting before landing on the young girl within the stone pillar. He did not know what her cultivation level was, but from the domineering aura that her body was emitting, Zen could tell that she was definitely much stronger than the other super powerful beings on the 13th floor. The powerful masters at the Soul Sea realm were surprised as they saw Zen's gaze. One of them said, "This girl is a master at the Spirit Supreme realm. She is even stronger than Master Derek. How could one take over her corpse? And it is unclear whether she is dead or not." Spirit Supreme realm. Zen's eyes gleamed. In the upper world, the life and death realm was just the threshold, while the Soul Sea realm was just a beginning level. The Spirit Supreme realm warriors formed the real backbone of the upper world. Master Derek that the Soul Sea realm master had mentioned referred to the white-browed Taoist who should also be at the Spirit Supreme realm. And Immortal Mist should be at the Spirit Supreme realm, too. But what about Yolanda? Although Yolanda's cultivation level was not high, she had a million duplicates. Her strength probably far surpassed the Spirit Supreme realm. And the more powerful beings were beyond Zen's knowledge. Even someone at the Spirit Supreme realm would be enough to make Zen look up to him. Thus, once he had heard what the Soul Sea realm master had to say, Zen became even more interested in the girl in the stone pillar. Forget about whether the girl in the pillar is dead or not. First of all, there's no way to undo the chains, or to break the crystal coffin she is in. To control her body is completely impossible, Turner said. But Zen merely smirked and returned to Federico's coffin. He stretched out his hand and took out a small space ring. When the many powerful warriors of the Soul Sea realm saw this, they realized what Zen wanted to do. Their eyes immediately lit up with surprise. Fiona and Randy also came to understand Zen's intentions. Even Callan, who had always been slow in thinking, said, "That's right. You can open this crystal coffin with the Black Star pickaxe." Chapter 875, A Living Corpse. The Heavenly Stellar Secret Land was bound to be the core of the dragon lineage human given that it was above the other three secret lands. These Soul Sea realm warriors had never succeeded in obtaining the ancestral dragon egg. Zen knew he would have to find another way to do so. He knew that he had to obtain the Spirit Supreme realm girl's corpse. The other Soul Sea realm warriors, especially War Emperor York, had gotten excited when he revealed his black star. It wasn't because they didn't want to obtain the young girl's corpse themselves. It was because they couldn't. No matter how hard they tried, none of them had ever been able to break her crystal coffin and the chains that bound her. Zen's revelation of his black star filled them with excitement. To enter the Heavenly Stellar Secret Land, it was better to choose stronger corpses, and if Zen managed to break the crystal coffin, then they could also finally try to take over the young girl's corpse. But right now, they let Zen do his thing. Nobody was willing to compete with him against this. Surely, obtaining the ancestral dragon egg would be a great achievement, but nobody was too stupid to stand in Zen's way and risk offending him for this. Even War Emperor York, who originally had enmities with Zen, would not dare to compete and offend him now. Zen took the pickaxe out from his space ring as he approached the girl in the pillar. The four divine kingdoms, plunder of the Feather Holy Sea, had gifted them with the knowledge and understanding of each corpse's identity, all except for one. The young girl in the pillar was deeply mysterious and none of them knew anything about her origins. Zen couldn't help letting his wariness get to him. If the supposedly dead girl wasn't dead, then wouldn't they be in trouble if he let her out? His soul gently floated beside the stone pillar. The clear, crystal coffin gave him an undisturbed view of the girl that stood inside. She didn't wear a lot of clothes, and her skin was littered with nasty scars. Heavy, iron chains tightly bound both her hands and feet. Why was she tied up like this? Who was she? These questions lingered in his head as he sized her up. However, Zen knew he wouldn't really be able to find the answers by just standing there. He brandished the pickaxe in his hand and set to work in setting her free from her crystal coffin. Fighting with a pickaxe was less than ideal. There were more than thousands of techniques for swords, sabers, and spears, but none for pickaxes. However, as a supreme divine weapon, the law of causality contained within Zen's pickaxe was very strong. That was the reason why he put a lot of trust in his pickaxe. Zen was even confident that it had the ability to dig through anything in the world. Clang! Zen's Jasper Fighting Soul Realm soul was incredibly strong, however, it could never compare to the strength of his physical body. Luckily, he didn't need to exert that much effort to use the pickaxe. With a simple strike, it was immediately able to smash against the crystal coffin and introduce a few cracks on the surface. Crack! It didn't even need a second strike. The moment the cracks appeared, they continued to spread along the surface until the crystal inevitably shattered and turned into fine dust. The entire coffin fell off the stone pillar, but the girl remained bound by the iron chains. Astonishment filled Zen once the crystal coffin fell and the young girl's fragrance wafted over his nose. There's even a faint fragrance. Is she still alive? Out of curiosity, Zen reached out and touched her chest. Plop, plop, there was a heartbeat, and they were powerful. What stood before him was no corpse, but the physical body of a living person. To say he was shocked was an understatement. Although the young girl had been able to speak before, her voice was too mechanical for it to have come from an intelligent being, so nobody from the 4 divine kingdoms could discern if she was truly alive or not. However, the powerful heartbeats in her chest indicated that she was a living person. But the dragon lineage human killed everyone for their blood sacrifice. So why was there a living person here? Did she serve a purpose? Zen could guess that her soul had long since been obliterated, but her physical body was preserved by some kind of secret technique. If he was correct, then that meant it would be much simpler for him to possess her body. A living but soulless body meant that he wouldn't even need the soul core. An added bonus was that he would be able to exert his full power, meaning that it would be much stronger than the corpses controlled by the soul cores. Then let's begin. Without thinking too much about it, Zen swung his pickaxe and broke the chains that bound her. He gently pinched the young girl's cheek with a smile. I'm sorry, I have to take over your body now. He put the pickaxe back in his space ring and immediately entered through the girl's mouth. His soul appeared within the girl's mind, and the moment he realized where he was, his brow furrowed and he immediately put his guard up. It had been too easy, which meant that there was a catch and it was coming soon enough. The girl was much stronger than any of the corpses in the surrounding coffins. There was no way Zen would be able to easily occupy her mind without the slightest repulsive force. Something was up. What's going on? Why haven't I integrated with her? The soul core should have helped Zen control this body, but in this girl's pitch-black mind, the soul core was rendered absolutely useless. It was all too strange, and Zen felt his instincts scream at him to leave her mind quickly. I have to leave. It only took him 6 seconds to come to his decision, however, he was already doomed the moment he entered her body. A dignified voice spoke, since you're already here, you can't just leave like that. It's a trap, he murmured to himself. He was panicking earlier, but now that he realized that there was nothing he could do to escape, he quickly calmed himself down. He figured that he should take things slow and easy and try to think of a logical solution to his current dilemma. Who are you? Zen asked through his consciousness. Me. Didn't you stare at me too many times already? Don't you know who I am? The girl asked, with a slightly offended tone to her voice. You're not a dead person, so why are you sealed in this cemetery? He asked. Who said I wasn't dead? I have indeed died, but I never expected someone to come after so many years just to occupy my body. Perhaps you want to accompany me? The soul replied indifferently. You're dead, Zen repeated to himself in puzzlement. So she was a corpse with her own soul and undamaged body. But how could she be dead if her heartbeat was even stronger than Zen's? I can't really explain it to you clearly. However, since you're here, you should stay with me. Don't even try to escape. The voice said once again. Zen quickly cupped his hands to show his sincerity. Lady, I am so sorry that I unwittingly barged into your body. Please forgive me for offending you. Please be magnanimous. The girl, however, cut him off. What did you say? You, unwittingly, barged in. Do you take me for a fool? I wasn't born yesterday, you know. You clearly wanted to take over my body. Do you think I will let you go? No way. Zen frowned at her reply. Since she wasn't going to let him go, Zen willed his soul to speed away from her mind. However, it was in vain. The girl's soul seemed to be much more powerful than his. She merely snorted before red ripples suddenly appeared around the edges of her dark mind. Chapter 876, The World in the Body. The red ripples firmly locked Zen within the girl's mind. He heard her chuckle. You want to run? Your soul isn't even at the Jasper fighting soul realm yet. You actually think you can escape from me? She said. His heart sank at her words. It seemed she was so powerful that the Jasper fighting soul realm was nothing in her eyes. That was the moment Zen knew that he was in big trouble. He launched several attacks against the edges of the girl's mind, but to no avail. His soul's power was limited and he did not dare exhaust it. He gave up in the meantime once he realized that he wasn't getting out of there that easily. He stopped resisting and settled on quietly floating in the darkness. He waited for a while before spreading his consciousness. It's useless to keep me here. Why don't you let me out? He tried convincing her. There was no response, and only silence pervaded the darkness. Zen could not control the girl's body, so his soul was unable to sense anything from the outside. He was, to put it simply, trapped inside this pitch-black prison that was her mind. Zen continued to spread out his consciousness, trying to get her to talk. Hey, say something. Your body was bound in that crystal coffin for so many years, and I was the one who helped you break free from it. Your legs are still bound, by the way. If you want to be truly free, you have to let me go so I can break the chains for you. However, no matter what he did, there was still no response. Zen berated himself for ever entering the girl's mind. The thought of never getting out of here made him extremely depressed. He should have just knocked her off the stone pillar and thrown her somewhere. It also frustrated him that he could have easily taken over any corpse back on the 13th floor, but he chose to enter this young girl's strange and mysterious body. He was in this predicament because of his greedy decision. The warriors back on the 13th floor were powerful, but they were only slightly stronger than the country leaders. They could never hope to compare to this girl at the Spirit Supreme realm. Everyone also wanted to take over her body, not just him, but he was the one that succeeded. He was the one that had been able to open the crystal coffin and everyone else didn't want to compete against him. The only problem was that he was also the one trapped in this pitch-black prison with no hope of escaping. Just as he reflected on his actions, blood-red ripples suddenly appeared in the girl's mind and shot towards Zen. Dodge. Zen's soul quickly mobilized the moment he saw them. His speed was enough to outrun the red ripples. However, the space in the girl's mind was limited and the ripples continued to spread. It wasn't long before the blood-red ripples covered her entire mind and surrounded Zen. Since he was in his soul form, he was unable to use space law to dodge. A red hand quickly emerged from the ripples and grabbed Zen's soul by his ankle, pulling him towards the bottom. Boom! The sensation of falling quickly overwhelmed him. His soul seemed to be falling, piercing through the clouds as patches of incandescent electric lightning twisted around him. Is this a fairyland or just a mere illusion? He couldn't help but wonder to himself. As he fell, Zen saw a vast ocean. As he got closer, he saw a single, solitary island in the middle, covered with living, emerald-green foliage. Lightning continued to flash in the sky and he saw a bolt strike the island itself, setting a tree ablaze. Zen found himself being dragged into the center of the island, where he saw a group of people standing not too far away. Their clothes were made of leaves while their weapons consisted mostly of spears made of tree trunks. They looked primitive and not at all intelligent. However, another sight caught Zen's attention. In the middle of these spear-wielding people were 4 barbarians that carried a simple palanquin made of wooden sticks. Inside the sedan chair was a woman who had slender legs and golden eyes that glared at Zen coldly. It was none other than the girl in the stone pillar. To be exact, this was her soul. Her primitive attendants made all sorts of weird sounds as they carried her towards Zen. She gently raised her hand, signaling them to stop and put her down. "What is this place?" Zen asked. The young girl smiled at him. "A lower world warrior is truly ignorant. You don't even know about this place." His brow furrowed at her words. He actually had a wild guess what this place was, but he wasn't too sure. He knew for a fact that once a warrior entered the life and death realm, the life vitality within his body would liquefy. Once it reached a certain level, he would enter the soul sea realm and thus open up the soul sea within his body. It was said that this soul sea had the small possibility of sustaining life. However, this could only be done once the person had cultivated to a higher level. Only after reaching the Spirit Supreme realm would the soul sea inside a warrior's body solidify and give birth to all sorts of creatures. Zen had dismissed it as hearsay, but the scene in front of him said otherwise. He returned the girl's cold glare. It's just a world within the body of a warrior at the Spirit Supreme realm. The young girl's attitude changed quickly once she heard his conclusion. She clapped her hands with a smile. Bingo! Why did you bring me here? Zen asked. The girl blinked at him. You were the one who wanted to possess my body shell and take over my body. Since you failed, you are now my captive. Do you understand now? Zen could see that the young girl was on the verge of going insane and it gave him a very bad feeling. He didn't know how long she had been trapped inside the crystal coffin, but it was only normal for her to go mad after being locked up for so long. Zen realized that he had no choice but to resort to threats. Let me out. My companions are waiting for me outside. If I don't go out, they might destroy your body. Her face broke into a frown. Your companions? You mean those little guys at the Soul Sea realm? Little guys at the Soul Sea realm. Those, little guys, were war emperors and war kings. To Zen, they were old monsters that had lived for tens of thousands of years, but to this girl, they were nothing. His silence prompted the girl to continue speaking. You think they can hurt me after you opened the crystal coffin with the black star? I'd like to see them try. If they even dare to. She paused for a moment before letting out a borderline maniacal laugh. There really is an idiot coming over. The girl momentarily closed her eyes. When she opened them again, a golden light flashed within her pupils. It was a little guy at the Soul Sea realm. I've already killed him, she drawled lazily. What? How could someone just kill a Soul Sea realm warrior so quickly? How was that even possible? You're lying, he said in a grave tone. The girl shot him a sharp look. Lying? Why would I do that? I didn't want to kill him, but you threatened me. I needed to teach you a lesson. I've disintegrated both that guy's body and soul. Anyone who dares to steal dragon lineage humans' bodies is seeking death. Chapter 877, God of Creation. A wave of silence washed over Zen when his soul entered the girl's mind. The soul core had no effects, and his soul didn't get ejected. However, the Soul Sea realm masters were worried about Zen. Although the people of the 4 divine kingdoms had thoroughly checked all areas in the cemetery, this woman's identity was still unknown. Even if she could speak, no one could figure out from her voice if she was dead or alive. Zen had smashed the crystal coffin as soon as he reached it, but it would be too risky to take over this woman's body. But this woman had been locked up for an immeasurable amount of time. Even if she was a Spirit Supreme Realm Master, her lifespan should have been long exhausted. She still wouldn't escape death, even after having experienced the 5 aging processes. It was impossible for the Masters in the universe to escape their lifespans' limitation. It was just that their lifespans had varying lengths. Therefore, taking such a risk was definitely worth it. At that time, War King Wind, Turner and War Emperor York wanted to give it a try. However, Zen managed to occupy the corpse before the others could take a chance. When they saw Zen enter the physical body, all movements suddenly stopped. Everyone became worried and wanted to see what happened. At that moment, several Soul Sea realm masters, who controlled the corpses they had just occupied, approached the young girl's corpse. The Soul Sea realm master who was the nearest to the young girl's body stood only a few feet away. When he looked closer, the girl's eyes suddenly opened. The Soul Sea realm masters were quick to react, since they occupied corpses of some powerful Soul Sea realm masters. Although the bodies were all dead, the masters had activated most of the corpses' strengths using the soul cores. However, the nearest Soul Sea realm master still couldn't escape. The young girl's eyes were sharp, and had golden pupils. A golden light enveloped the Soul Sea realm master in front of her, who suddenly howled out in pain. Soon enough, cracks began to form on the corpse's skin, which was inhabited by the Soul Sea realm master. The cracks continued to spread like the dry ground during an earthquake. The corpses had been in storage for at least 10,000 years. The blood in their bodies had dried up long ago, so no red liquid flowed out when the corpse collapsed. However, the Soul Sea realm master's soul was forced out of the disintegrated corpse. The soul continued to howl and couldn't escape from the clutches of the young girl's gaze. The fighting soul should have been unbelievably strong, but it quickly dissolved like ice in the hot summer heat under the golden light. In just a blink of an eye, it completely vanished. So ruthless. This young girl is definitely alive. Everyone, move back. Don't get any closer. I don't know how Thad is doing now. I just hope he doesn't die here. I shouldn't have brought him into the Divine Emperor's secret land this time. In the beginning, the Soul Sea realm masters all thought that Zen's soul was stronger than theirs, so entering the Divine Emperor's secret land might not be a problem. Zen's powerful strength could easily take over the corpse of a Soul Sea realm master. But who would have thought that Zen would want to occupy the body of the young girl in the pillar? Now, the tables had turned as they were afraid that Zen might stir up a lot of trouble. The Soul Sea realm masters, Callan, Randy, and the others all stepped aside. They nervously stared at the girl in the pillar in silence, afraid that she would suddenly attack them. If this young girl was really alive, she could probably kill everyone as her cultivation base was at the Spirit Supreme realm. After that moment of silence, they all saw the young girl slowly close her golden eyes. Relief flooded their senses. Your Majesty, what should we do now? A Soul Sea realm master asked Turner. Now, Turner and War King Wind were upset. According to the original plan, everyone who entered the cemetery was supposed to occupy a corpse and continue to advance towards the heavenly stellar secret land. As for the 4 divine kingdom rulers, they were to think how to occupy the corpses on the 13th floor. If they made it, they would occupy them. If they failed, they would give up on the corpses and try to occupy the other ones. For instance, one of the divine kingdom rulers, Scott, tried to control a corpse but was unsuccessful. Thus, he just gave up. However, no one expected Zen to mess up the original plan and occupy that woman's body. So now, he ended up in such a troublesome situation. Turner hesitated for a while before he gritted his teeth and said, "Wait." At that point, he wasn't sure whether Zen was dead or alive. But after he saw the miserable ending of that Soul Sea Realm master whose soul had been melted, he thought that Zen was most likely in great danger now. Then again, everyone's fate in the world was set by the heavens, and it had to follow some sort of logic. Zen was blessed with good luck and had even opened the Mahayana lotus flower before. Such a warrior with a lucky destiny would definitely not die in a lower world. He might shoulder a more challenging mission, and make greater achievements in the future. Therefore, Turner decided to wait and check what happened to Zen. While the blood sacrifice's power in the Feather Holy Sea would gradually recover over time, there were at least a few more days left. Thus, they weren't that pressed for time. Meanwhile, the crowd could only watch from a safe distance away from the young girl in the pillar, and wait quietly. Waves of lighting flashed and thunder roared within the world in the girl's body, and then sprinkled onto the sea of life vitality. The young girl didn't appear to be too malicious towards Zen. She only told him to follow her obediently when she was carried by the aboriginals towards the side of the island. A few moments later, Zen saw an extremely primitive tribe. There were quite a few people, with old and young alike everywhere. However, they seemed to live in an older time as majority of the natives were naked. After they entered the tribe, an old man with a bag of skulls on his back showed up. He waved the white bone cane in his hand and crawled towards the young girl. Soon after, all the people in the tribe knelt down in front of her in a reverent manner. "You created all these humans, right?" asked Zen. The girl's lips curved into a faint smile. "Yes, they all call me God of Creation. I think that's the right name. It took me a lot of time to create this world." Boom! As the girl spoke, another wave of thunder struck the sea. The crack of thunder crashed within the small world, as if it was about to destroy it. In turn, the entire sea of life vitality let out a roar. The young girl chuckled at Zen's shocked expression and said, "Don't be afraid. This thunder's power is not strong. It's just that it's quite scary in the inner world. I've put in a lot of time and energy just to obtain the thunder. The crystal coffin can't draw the thunder towards it. When it rained and thundered, I could only let the thunder pass through the chains and into my body. It's too inconvenient." The Spirit Supreme Realm warrior could indeed solidify the life vitality. But even if a continent was created in the Soul Sea, it would still be lifeless. If one wanted his body to be filled with living things, then the only way was to continuously draw in thunder to constantly strike the continent. Only then would some low-level creatures begin to appear in the life vitality sea. After that, life would slowly evolve. It usually took hundreds, or thousands, or even tens of thousands of years to make the world fully alive and vigorous. It took me 120,000 years to nurture this island as well as the various creatures in it, the young girl sighed softly. After 120,000 years, it's only this little. Zen was stunned. This speed was much slower than he had expected. The young girl smiled and shook her head. "You don't understand. The inner world's nurturing speed is extremely fast. The birth of the first and most insignificant creature might take 100,000 years, but it would only take a few thousand years for this civilization to grow and prosper." "So that's the case," Zen said, blinking his eyes. He didn't feel too much malice from this woman, so he asked again carefully, "But why did you lock me up here?" To Zen's surprise, the young girl smiled and said, "Creating the world on my own is too boring. Stay here and create the world with me. Isn't that very interesting?" In turn, Zen was utterly speechless and surprised when he heard her. He originally wanted to retort that it was not fun at all, but he didn't say that. After a moment of thought, he said, "My soul left my body, and my physical body is still outside. My soul can leave my body for a few days, but if it stays outside away from my physical body for too long, I'm afraid that I will be in trouble." The young girl pouted and said, "It doesn't matter." She added, "My soul is also disconnected from my physical body all the time. Look, my physical body is still alive and well, so is my soul. I have a way to make your soul immortal. This method was inherited from the soul race. Do you want me to teach you?" Chapter 878, Turn of Events. Hearing what the girl said, Zen couldn't help but roll his eyes. Perhaps, he had met a mad woman. The good thing was that she did not immediately kill him, otherwise, with her strength she might be able to destroy his soul within seconds. The problem was that if he really was confined in here, the situation could get quite troublesome. As he was lost in thought, a spiritual wave suddenly came over him. "Zen, you seem to have run into some trouble." This wave had come from the Cyan Dragon. The cyan dragon and the mysterious furnace were inside the head of his physical body, but Zen had already confirmed before that he was still able to communicate with the cyan dragon while his soul and body were separated. As for how the cyan dragon managed to know what Zen was up to, the latter had no idea. Yes, there is a little problem. I seem to have met a crazy woman, Zen muttered. Crazy woman? The cyan dragon asked in a strange voice. Zen narrated to him everything that had happened in the cemetery. When Zen mentioned that the woman's pupils were golden, the cyan dragon interrupted him. Are you telling me that this woman has a pair of golden eyes and was sealed within the crystal coffin? Yes, Zen answered. Haha, so that explains it. The cyan dragon's laughter rang through Zen's ears. What's so funny? You're a powerful figure in genuine dragon race. Don't you have some way of helping me out? Zen asked, irritated. At this moment, the woman stared at Zen's soul and asked, who are you speaking to? This world within the woman's body had been created by herself. Even though Zen had communicated with the cyan dragon through his own perception, she still noticed that he was talking to someone. Zen pursed his lips and ignored her. The voice of the cyan dragon came through once again. Zen, ask her if her name is Brianna Feng. You know her? Zen asked him. Maybe, the cyan dragon replied. From his tone, it seemed that he was immersed in past memories. Zen nodded. With a smile on his face, he spoke to the woman. Someone wants to know if you are Brianna Feng. When Zen said the name, the woman's body trembled. The earth and heavens of this world were shaking violently. Rumble. With a crash of thunder, the entire island vibrated. The life vitality sea roared. Huge waves with the size of small mountains swept toward the island. On the island, the aboriginal humans were in a state of panic. They were fleeing and murmuring something in a language that Zen did not understand. It had probably been created by this woman herself. This world was the woman's creation, so it reflected her state of mind. What Zen just said had obviously caused some sort of turmoil in her heart. When Zen saw the apocalyptic scene before him, he gasped. Confused, he wondered what the big deal was. Wasn't it just a name? Did she have to make such a fuss about it? Who told you my name? Brianna Feng asked, still staring at Zen. Before Zen could say anything, the cyan dragon spoke again. Tell her that it's her grandpa Josh. Hearing this, Zen chuckled with amusement. Really, she is your granddaughter. Josh was a genuine dragon, but this woman wasn't. Zen had heard that after a legendary beast progressed to a certain level, it could take a human form. Zen wondered if it meant that Brianna Feng was a genuine dragon too. The woman stared at Zen with burning eyes and repeated her question, tell me, who is it? He said he's your grandpa Josh. Zen laughed. Boom. Lightning flashed across the sky, silver sparks the shape of snakes crashing down into the sea. In the outside world, such lightning would perhaps not be as scary. However, in the world inside the woman's body, the streak of lightning was comparable to a large mountain. From the looks of it, it was quite frightening. Seeing this woman in a frenzy, Zen couldn't help but sigh, could you calm down a bit? But the young girl's face betrayed her sorrow. She couldn't hold it any longer and finally began to wail. However, she was still in the form of her soul. Thus, when she cried, Zen only heard the sound but did not see any tears. Zen felt even more helpless now. He did not know if he should remain quiet or pacify her. Although she looked like a little girl, she was in fact much older than some of the oldest masters. Cyan Dragon, what should I do now? Zen could only turn to the Cyan Dragon for help. Tell her to stop crying, the Cyan Dragon replied calmly. Zen could only convey this to the girl, your grandfather is telling you not to cry. It worked. Just as Zen uttered these words, Brianna Feng stopped crying altogether and stared at Zen blankly. Why is my grandpa Josh with you? She whispered. What about the other grandpas? Shall I tell her the truth? Zen asked the Cyan Dragon. Up until now, Zen had never revealed the secrets of the mysterious furnace and the 9 genuine dragons to anyone. Even the black flame within the furnace was to be used only as a last resort. The only other person who knew of the 9 genuine dragons was Lavender. Zen was understandably cautious and hesitant. She's not an outsider, so you can tell her everything, the Cyan Dragon assured him. Zen shrugged and told her about the 9 genuine dragons. He then added, looks like these 9 genuine dragons are your grandfathers. Brianna Feng nodded, her expression miserable. I see. Zen heaved a sigh of relief. He was glad that she was able to understand it. It seemed that this woman wasn't all that crazy after all. She too was one of them. If that was the case, then what he dealt with ahead would be easy to handle. If he had known that this matter could be resolved in such a way, he would not have wasted his precious time arguing with her. Now that you understand, it's all good. Would you let me go? He asked her. Brianna Fung blinked, her eyes seemingly vacant. Why should I let you go? What, do you still want me to stay with you and create this world? Zen asked her crossly. This woman seemed to have a deep relationship with the 9 genuine dragons, so she shouldn't make things difficult for him for no reason. I am under the soul-sealing spell of the soul race, so my soul is imprisoned inside the world within my body. This spell cannot be broken, and I cannot control my own body, she said quietly. Zen had noticed something strange in her before. Brianna Fung had been in chains and sealed in the crystal coffin, so her body could not move at all. It seemed that she had been locked up for countless years. A Spirit Supreme Realm warrior's lifespan was longer than that of a mighty warrior of the Soul Sea Realm. Her lifespan should still be of 100,000 years. However, from what Brianna Fung had said, she spent 100,000 years just creating the creatures in her world, and yet she hadn't entered the 5 aging processes. Zen assumed that she had used some sort of technique to delay that. The technique, apparently, was the soul-sealing spell. But she wasn't the one who had imposed it on herself, it had been someone else. To a certain extent, the soul-sealing spell was able to delay the 5 aging processes. In the upper world, there were truly some powerful ones who could use this technique to extend their lifespans. However, the drawbacks of the method were obvious. Before anyone removed the soul-sealing spell, they would lose completely control of their body. Then their soul would be confined within their body. Except for creating their own worlds to kill time, there was nothing else that they could do then. Ordinary cultivators at the Spirit Supreme Realm could create a world in their cinnabar field using just a wisp of their souls. They did not need the entirety of their souls to enter the world. Brianna Fung had been deliberately put into a helpless situation. Her soul had been sealed into her cinnabar field by someone else. I do not have control on my body, but if your soul has fused with the soul core, then I can help you control it. Brianna Fung said, smiling widely. Could it work that way? Zen was speechless, but his face revealed his joy. Controlling her body had originally been Zen's goal from the beginning itself. It seemed that he would be able to achieve his goal. However, he did not anticipate that the process would be so strange. He was fortunate that Brianna Fung and the Cyan Dragon were family. In the absence of this turn of events, he would have been in great trouble. Facing a soul of a master at the Spirit Supreme Realm, Zen would have had no way to survive. Chapter 879, Made a Mistake. I'll get you out of this inner world right now. Brianna said and lightly waved her hand towards Zen. The next moment, he felt an invisible force enveloping him. Soon after that, his soul suddenly shot straight up into the sky. As he was flying in the air, he was struck by another bolt of lightning that startled him. After leaving the inner world, Zen returned once again into Brianna's mind. As he was getting aware of his surroundings, he heard the woman's voice. I've sealed off all the power you released from the soul core earlier. But there shouldn't be any problem now. Following this piece of information, strands of gray light began to soak into Brianna's body. Zen's soul was immersed in her mind now, and her bodily senses were slowly wakening. Unaware of these developments, Turner, War King Wind, and the rest of the company were standing around with gloomy expressions on their faces. The atmosphere was extremely depressing on the platform, and it was visible on everyone's face. The longer they waited, the slimmer their hopes became. It had already been 4 hours since the unfortunate incident, but there was still no news of Zen, nor any communication from him. Everyone knew that Zen's soul had probably perished long ago. It was just that they were still in denial and didn't want to admit it. Alas, we shouldn't have explored the heavenly stellar secret land this time. It would have been completely fine if we didn't try to get our hands on the ancestral dragon's egg. What really gets to me is that we brought Thad with us. And now he's gone, a Soul Sea Realm master suddenly remarked. Regret could be seen on his face. Give up on the heavenly stellar secret land? Humph, I don't think Master Derek would have been too happy with that idea. Another Soul Sea Realm master refuted. I don't think so. Although the ancestral dragon's egg is important, I believe that is more important than that. Furthermore, I am unsure that we will obtain the ancestral dragon's egg this year anyway. So I guess we will have to try next year. Guys, the problem is that Thad himself insisted on entering the heavenly stellar secret land. So it's not actually our fault, and we can't blame it on him either. Numerous powerful warriors at the Soul Sea Realm began animatedly discussing the matter. Quiet. War King Wind suddenly stood up and roared at them furiously. Although every single warrior on the platform was at the Soul Sea Realm, the authority of any one of the 4 emperors was unquestionable. Thus, when War King Wind roared, everyone shut their mouths. I will take over a corpse on the 12th floor. And then we'll head towards the heavenly stellar secret land. War King Wind continued. He was already in a terrible mood to begin with after seeing what happened to Zen, so when he heard them make a ruckus, he naturally became extremely agitated. Hearing that her father wanted to leave, Fiona stopped him. Father, why don't we wait a little longer? Even though Fiona's soul was currently in another woman's body, War King Wind could still read the sorrow in her eyes. Look, Thad is probably dead. Although no one knew what was going on inside the woman's body, the death of a Soul Sea Realm Master could easily explain everything. The Master's soul was still inside the corpse when he had approached the woman's body, but the corpse had been burned and the Master's soul was eliminated in the blink of an eye. This woman was extremely powerful. The corpse belonged to the dragon lineage human, but it was still burned to a crisp just by the power of her eyes. Fiona pursed her lips, and a trace of stubbornness appeared on her face. She replied, Father, I want to investigate a bit more. No way. War King Wind refused Fiona's request without hesitation. The miserable state of that Soul Sea Realm Master was still fresh in his mind, and he wasn't going to let his daughter fall prey to the same fate. Fiona, give up. Callan also shook his head at his sister. Fiona didn't say anything, she only looked at the nearby stone pillar, lost in thought. Right now, only Turner, War King Wind, and War Emperor York were still in their soul forms. After the woman's crystal coffin had been opened, the resultant events had made them afraid that more accidents might follow, so they had entered the 12th floor. Soon after that, War King Wind and the other two emperors had picked up corpses on the 12th floor and returned to the 13th floor. All right, let's go, War King Wind ordered. Although everyone felt helpless, there was really nothing they could do. They could only choose to enter the heavenly stellar secret land. The emperor could not be questioned. The road to the heavenly stellar secret land lay at the back of the cemetery. They just needed to go down the stairs on the other side. However, just as everyone was about to go around the stone pillar and leave, Fiona suddenly started walking towards the stone pillar. Fiona! Callan shouted loudly. The Soul Sea Realm Masters were also alarmed by Fiona's action. They moved back a couple of steps. At the same time, War King Wind shot towards Fiona like an arrow. Alas! Fiona has always been an obedient child, but now, she is going to do something against my orders. For a man, even if Thad is not dead, she will be killed as soon as she gets close to that woman. I must stop her, he thought. Fiona felt regret in her heart. She felt that it was impossible for Zen to die here just like that. As for the mystery surrounding this woman, she really wanted to look into it. Fiona, stop right there, War King Wind roared. Fiona merely turned a deaf ear to the angry roar of her father. She stood in front of the woman and asked calmly, what did you do to Thad? Seeing this scene, War King Wind cursed harshly inside his mind. He was furious at the fact that his daughter could be so naive. Luckily, the woman did not open her eyes. He hoped that she would let Fiona go. Right at that moment, War King Wind was only about 20 to 30 feet away from Fiona. As for the other Soul Sea Realm Masters, they had also returned and were following behind him. While these events were taking place, the gray light from the soul core had already enveloped all parts of Brianna's body. There is a girl standing in front of me who isn't afraid of death. She dares to come close. Is she your sweetheart? Brianna asked Zen in her mind. Of all the warriors present, only Fiona was a female. Zen understood Brianna's reference and replied, don't hurt her. Brianna smiled but didn't say anything. Zen had now completed his assimilation. The control of the body was temporarily in his hands. He tried moving his fingers a few times, and then slowly opened his eyes. When the golden pupils in the woman's eyes appeared, War King Wind revealed a look of shock. He increased his speed even further, adamant on getting Fiona out of the danger zone. However, Fiona sternly said, Master, please tell me how Thad is doing. We are here just. Before she could finish her words, a figure rushed over and pulled her away from the stone pillar. Go, all of you, run, she is waking up once again. We need to get out of here and make it into the heavenly stellar secret land. After all, this woman was at the Spirit Supreme realm. There was not a warrior in this company that could stand in front of her and not be crushed. No one wanted to face her. Fiona was being dragged down by her father, and was forced to run down the stairs at the other side while the other Soul Sea Realm Masters were now rushing forward as well. When Zen opened his eyes and saw this scene, his face was filled with bewilderment. Why did they abandon him and run away? With a quick thought, Zen understood this point. Brianna had just killed a powerful warrior at the Soul Sea Realm. Now he was controlling her body, but they didn't know who was pulling the strings. It would have been more strange if they didn't run away. They didn't know it was him. Since he was not familiar with the heavenly stellar secret land, he had to enter it with the people from the 4 divine kingdoms. As he thought of this, Zen quickly grabbed the space ring that he had placed aside and took out the black star. He gently waved it and shattered the chains on the woman's legs. Then, he leapt down from the pillar. Wow, this body is awesome. A spirit supreme realm warrior is indeed quite amazing. Zen could feel that the woman body was filled with power. His own strength was not weaker than a life and death realm warrior. But if he didn't use the power of the dragon scales, he would be weaker than a soul sea realm master. The moment he stepped on the floor, he immediately felt that his chest was sinking. At the same time, a strange expression appeared on his face. The structures of a woman's and a man's bodies are quite different, and being in the former one felt quite strange. However, right now, Zen could not care any less about that. He quickly steadied himself, his feet lightly stepped on the floor and his entire body shot out like an arrow, closely following behind Turner and the rest. We're safe now, guys. That woman's legs are still bound by the chains. There's no need to run then. It was really dangerous just now though. Where did this woman come from? I thought Spirit Supreme Realm warriors would be driven away from this great world. Why is she here after all this time? Just as the warriors of the 4 divine kingdoms relaxed, a Soul Sea Realm master looked back and saw the woman diving down at an extremely fast speed. His face darkened and he shouted out, "Run! She's still after us." Chapter 880, A Strange Feeling. Many heads swiveled around at the same time. Their shock was palpable at the sight of the woman at the Spirit Supreme Realm swooping down at such an unbelievable speed. They came forward in a mad rush. War King Wind grabbed Fiona and Callan and rushed to the front. Everyone knew that if they could run in the front, they would survive, and those who lagged behind would definitely die. Incredible, they are running so fast, Zen exclaimed. He looked at the Soul Sea Realm masters in front of him, and saw that they were trying to dodge him at a speed that was mind-boggling. He was helpless, but he felt a slight heat blossoming in his lower abdomen that indicated waves of life vitality. This life vitality was drawn from Brianna's inner world and was in continuous supply. Zen flew up into the sky by using the life vitality. Once they had entered the Divine Emperor Island, they couldn't fly because of the blood sacrifice. The corpses they occupied didn't have any life vitality, so they could only rely on the power of their own physical bodies. The group of Soul Sea Realm masters in front of Zen could normally fly freely in the sky, but now, they could only run around on the ground with their legs. However, their speed was still no match for the flying Zen, despite the mad dash. Whoosh! Wow, this speed is really amazing, Zen thought in wonder. He himself was a little stunned. Is this the power of a Spirit Supreme Realm Master? He utilized the life vitality and shot out at a speed that he would never even have imagined. Even if he brought out his forceful energy and life vitality at the same time, his speed would not be able to hold a candle to his current speed. This speed meant that Zen had caught up to them in no time. But he was not familiar with this body and couldn't properly control his speed. He had flown past them and landed in front of these Soul Sea Realm masters. After all, this body was not his own. Because he wasn't able to coordinate properly, he smashed onto the ground when he landed, creating a large crater at the point of contact. Hey, this is my body. Don't do anything reckless. Because of the soul sealing spell, Brianna was no longer able to control her own body. But this was still her body. This kind of a random collision wouldn't injure her body, but that didn't mean that it was okay to treat it like that. Zen flashed an embarrassed smile and got to his feet. He walked over to the group of Soul Sea Realm masters with a smile on his face, but was only greeted with a strange chilliness. Most powerful warriors at the Soul Sea Realm looked nervously at Zen. Turner, War King Wind, and War Emperor York were stronger and calmer than them, but right now, they had already decided to risk their lives in resistance. The problem was that even if they fought to death, they were simply no match for a Spirit Supreme Realm Master. Moreover, since they had already occupied the corpses of others, they were unable to display their full strength. Going by this, the top masters of the 4 divine kingdoms would be in big trouble this time. Turner looked calmly at the smiling woman and then said, "Master, we have accidentally landed in the cemetery. Please forgive us if we disturbed you." As he watched their expressions, Zen suddenly had the urge to play a prank. Wiping the smile off his face, he said coldly, "Forgive you? You accidentally landed in the cemetery. Humph, that's nice to hear." The group's hearts sank at Zen's words. It looked like the woman hadn't come with good intentions. All the powerful warriors at the Soul Sea realm were struggling to maintain calm, and this was evident on their faces. If they were to fight against this woman at the Spirit Supreme realm, all of them would probably die here. But Fiona rushed out of the crowd and asked, "Master, what did you do to Thad? Is he dead?" Zen was touched at Fiona's concern for him. He suddenly smiled and said, "Of course I'm fine." The group's confusion grew at this ridiculous reply. Fiona was confused as she stared searchingly at the woman in front of her. But she knew that the woman's smile was somewhat familiar. Even if people change their appearances or even their bodies, their previous habits, movements, and features were bound to remain. A thought occurred to Fiona. A possibility. "Thad, you're Thad. You've succeeded," she said suddenly. Zen nodded, smiling. Fiona's exclamation brought the realization that this was Zen himself to the people at the Soul Sea realm. He had actually succeeded in occupying the body of the woman in the crystal coffin. They were greatly relieved. They hadn't expected Zen to succeed. "Thad, since you've succeeded, can we take over the corpses on the 13th floor?" War King Wind asked. Just moments earlier, they had been unable to take over the corpses of the super-powerful masters on the 13th floor because of this woman. But now that Zen had taken away the body of the woman, they could simply turn around and take over the corpses on the 13th floor. Taking away the woman's body was tantamount to removing a crucial obstacle. Zen nodded at them and said, "Sure, you can take over the other corpses." War King Wind, Scott, War Emperor York, and Turner were overjoyed. The four of them chose to turn around immediately. The Soul Sea realm masters who believed that their strength was of the same level as the four emperors also wanted to join them. After all, anyone would be willing to occupy a powerful corpse. Zen and the rest stood where they were, waiting for them to change their corpses. Fiona, Callan, Randy, and the rest of the young warriors looked strangely at Zen. Fiona walked over to Zen, smiling slowly as she did. One usually chose a corpse of the same sex. But Zen's soul was now in a woman's body, making it an extremely strange experience. At first, they hadn't known that the woman was Zen and had been naturally fearful of her cultivation that was at the Spirit Supreme realm. But now that they had discovered that it was actually Zen, they surrounded him and began to size the body up. Randy chuckled and asked, "Thad, how do you feel?" Zen didn't know how to respond. As a man, he didn't like the feeling this body brought him, but on the other hand, it was still the body of a Spirit Supreme realm master. With the help of Brianna's body, the chances of him entering the Heavenly Stellar Secret Land to obtain the ancestral dragon's egg would increase by many times. "Not good," Fiona said, shaking her head as she sized Zen up. Bewildered, Zen looked at Fiona before asking, "What's not good?" "You're wearing too little." As Fiona spoke, she took out a set of clothes from her space ring and tossed them to Zen. Although a majority of the warriors had entered the cemetery in their soul forms, they still carried their space rings with them. After all, their space rings could come in handy if they ever needed anything important that the rings contained. The clothes on Brianna's body were flimsy, and her slender legs were exposed. Fiona clucked her tongue as she paid attention to these details. However, when Zen picked up the clothes that Fiona had thrown over to him, he was rendered speechless. It was a set of emerald green dresses. Zen refused to wear them, even though he knew that Fiona only had good intentions. He took out a man's outfit from his space ring and casually wrapped it around Brianna's body. Now that Zen had taken over her body, it was easy for the four emperors to seize the bodies on the 13th floor. They returned quickly, once they had taken over the corpses. None of the emperors could contain the excitement on their faces, even though they were in someone else's corpses. Only one of them had ever gotten a corpse on the 13th floor once. But this time, all of them had managed to get corpses. It was very likely that this time, they would be able to explore the entire Heavenly Stellar Secret Land in one go, and even obtain the ancestral dragon's egg. "We still have to thank you this time," Turner said to Zen. War King Wind agreed and said, "That's right. If it weren't for you, we wouldn't have been able to obtain so many soul cores, and we wouldn't have been able to take over these corpses." War King Wind occupied Federico's corpse, standing in the middle of the crowd like an iron tower, emitting a powerful, domineering aura. Zen smiled and said, "I'll need all of your help in this secret land." He looked towards the end of the cemetery. The Heavenly Stellar Secret Land was above these other three secret lands. It was the core of the dragon lineage human.